Chapter 431. Xuan'er's younger brother Dark Angel Undersor. Ling Han smiled and said, "Really, thanks a lot." That young Master Long looked very pleased with himself, but he had just barely completed the thought when he felt his vision darken. With a bang. His face was already crashed onto the table. With such a huge impact, the whole table split apart into multiple pieces, and his face was covered in soup. "How dare you!" The four servants yelled furiously and moved to grab Ling Han. Bang, 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 bang. Ling Han instantly shot out 4 punches. The 4 servants gripped their chests tightly, their faces pale. They fell seated on the ground, feeling as if they had a breath of air that was stuck in their air pipes. It was too horrible a feeling for mere words to describe. "Fuck, who asked you to be arrogant?" Zhao rushed forwards and gave the 4 of them a round of punches and kicks. His cultivation had been sealed, and he had served dishes a bit too slowly. Furthermore, he was an elite cultivator on the prodigy roll, so it was inevitable that he would have his own pride. As a result, that young man ordered his lackeys to give him a few harsh kicks. If it was not for the fact that he had the origin power of spiritual pedestal tier to refine his physical body, he would definitely have been severely wounded by now. As the saying went, when a tiger leaves the mountains and reached the plains, it'd be bullied by a dog. How could he not feel resentful? Xueqi's expression was not much better than his own. However, he was not as rash as Zhao, and furthermore, did not want to fall to the same level as those servants. Ling Han thought for a moment, stretched out his hand and with a brush, unsealed the cultivation of both Zhao and Xueqi. He said, "Because the 2 of you have performed acceptably these 10 days, I'll consider the debt paid." Xueqi and Zhao were a bit disbelieving until they felt the origin power gushing forth within their bodies. That was when they felt they had woken up from a dream. They were both extremely rueful. In these 10 days when their cultivation was sealed, they lived like normal people, which allowed them to have a taste of a different life than their own. It seemed like they had unexpectedly obtained a deeper comprehension in martial arts as a result. "Bastard! You actually dare to injure me?" Young Master Long got to his feet. There was still a piece of carrot dangling about the corner of his lips, and his whole face was covered in soup. His expression was one filled with absolute fury. "Do you know who I am?" Hearing such a familiar line, "I can probably guess that you have a very awesome elder brother, or perhaps father?" Ling Han asked, smiling. "Wrong. I have an incredibly awesome elder sister." Young Master Long exclaimed proudly. "Pa!" He was once again knocked down onto the ground by a smack from Ling Han. "Really an idiot that doesn't learn." Ling Han shook his head. Zhao looked at the young man and said fiercely, "Han, just hand over this brat to to me to deal with, okay?" He licked his lips, fire in his eyes. This young man was only in the 7th layer of the gushing spring tier, yet he was actually thrashed by such a minor character. If he did not repay this favor, how could he still be considered human? In comparison, he was more convinced by Ling Han's power. The latter was indeed very strong, and he could not defeat him. "You all dare!" Young Master Long shouted loudly, "My elder sister is Xuan'er." Zhao and Xueqi both exclaimed in surprise. Xuan'er, not only was she a well-known beauty of the North region, she was also well on the path to become the strongest of the younger generation of the North region. Her future accomplishment might possibly even exceed the spiritual infant tier. They could offend anyone except for Xuan'er, because she had too much influence. She needed only to call out, and how many young geniuses were willing to go through water and tread on fire for her sake? Pang! Young Master Long was once again smacked onto the ground by Ling Han's hand. "What are you shouting for?" "Pay compensation," Ling Han said fiercely. "Pay compensation? Pay what compensation?" Young Master Long looked very surprised. He was the obvious victim here, wasn't he? "You broke a table in my restaurant, so shouldn't you pay for it?" Ling Han asked fiercely. "It was obviously you who smacked my head onto the table," Young Master Long said weakly. With a bang, he was once again smacked onto the floor tiles, and created a hole in the floor. "How dare you, you actually broke the floor tiles in my restaurant!" Ling Han exclaimed darkly. Young Master Long felt very wronged. He was obviously being thrashed by Ling, so why was he the one being blamed? However, after being smacked consecutively for a few times, he finally realized how things were. Ling Han was even more arrogant and forceful than he was, and was unreasonable too. A person like him was usually arrogant, but was most afraid of encountering someone fiercer than them. Now, after being unreasonably beaten by Ling Han a few times, he was finally afraid. "I'll pay," he asked obediently. "How much?" Ling Han snatched the spatial ring that he was wearing, directly erased the divine sense that he had left on it, and swept his own divine sense within. There were actually a few thousand origin crystals inside. He could not help but smile and said, "I'll just take this sum, I won't bear a grudge for it being too little." "You are practically committing robbery here," young Master Long complained. "In." Ling Han tossed him a glare. Young Master Long hurriedly shook his head and said, Of course. You can get lost now." With a casual toss of his hand, Ling Han had thrown young Master Long out, and did the same with his 4 servants. "Just you wait and see, I will definitely come back." After young Master Long had raced off a certain distance, he cast out a line that fit the situation, then broke out into a mad run again. Ling Han could not help but laugh loudly. Profligate young masters were really profligate young masters. They only knew how to use their powerful connections as an intimidation tactic. "Ling Han, 20 days later, I shall see you at the Prodigy Tournament. By then, I will definitely not lose to you," Xueqi declared coldly. Ling Han had heard about the rules of the Prodigy Tournament before. In this kind of battle, it was not allowed to use any kind of alchemical pill or spirit tool to prevent an unjust battle. However, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion would prepare a great amount of weapons which were all forged from level 5 materials. Thought they were not spirit tools, they were extremely sturdy, and could sustain the powerful attacks of the spiritual pedestal tier. In Xueqi's eyes, Ling Han had been able to defeat him merely because he had the demon birth sword. Thus, since the Prodigy Tournament did not allow the use of spirit tools, he naturally had a high chance of victory. Ling Han was too lazy to explain. He only waved him off. He'd just have Hunyo ravaged Xueqi by then. Ji Derong broke into a run and fled as well. After being tortured by Ling Han for 10 days, he was filled with wariness of the former, and so naturally wanted to maintain a big distance from this demon. Young Master Long, whose real name was Zhu Longxing, was indeed Zhu Xuan'er's younger brother. In truth, his martial arts talent was not too bad either, but compared with Zhu Xuan'er, there was a very big gap. Furthermore, he did not have the heated drive to pursue martial arts. As a result, since he only liked to have fun and play around, he was currently only in the 7th layer of the Gushing Spring tier. How could he bear to swallow such a huge loss by himself? He immediately raced off to look for help, and his first choice was someone who had just recently addressed him as brother and mingled with closely Lu Qiyuan. When he arrived at Listen to the Rain Pavilion, Lu Qiyuan received him warmly. Good wine and good food, and there were beauties and singers to accompany him as well, fully giving him face. "Big brother Qiyuan, I was bullied by someone today." After drinking a few cups of wine, Zhu Longxing could no longer hold back and began to grumble about his grievances to Lu Qiyuan. "What? There is actually someone who dares to bully a brother of Lu Qiyuan, me, in this extreme Yang city. Tell me, who is so bold? I shall go and cut off his head for you," Lu Qiyuan immediately declared, patting his chest. "Thank you, big brother Qiyuan." Zhu Longxing quickly offered his thanks. "I've made my queries, that guy's name is Ling Han." "Pooh!" Lu Qiyuan suddenly spat out a mouthful of wine directly onto Zhu Longxing. This made Zhu Longxing very confused. They were having a nice conversation, so what do you mean by suddenly spitting wine in my face? Lu Qiyuan coughed unstoppably. He hurriedly drank some tea to calm himself, and with hope that things were not like what he had thought, said, "It can't be Ling Han from Forget Not, right?" "It's indeed that guy." "Pooh!" Lu Qiyuan spat again. Extraordinarily accurately, it was Zhu Longxing's face again. Zhu Longxing. 10,000 cuss words flew through his mind. Fuck, I'll forget about you spitting at me once, but twice? Do I have some kind of enmity with you? Chapter 432. Results of the Special Training. Dark Angel _ Big Brother Qiyuan. Zhu Longxing began weakly. You spat 2 times consecutively at me, and every time was so extraordinarily accurate, hitting my face directly. You did it on purpose, didn't you? Lu Qiyuan's expression became serious. He warned, don't you ever trifle with that guy. Big brother Qiyuan, why is it that even you are scared of that guy? Zhu Longxing asked strangely. Not only you and I should not trifle with that guy. Even if your elder sister was here and my grandfather moved personally, they would be able to do nothing against him, either. Lu Qiyuan said, shaking his head. How could that be possible? Zhu Longxing exclaimed in shock. He is an Earth-grade alchemist. Lu Qiyuan revealed the secret. Pooh! Zhu Longxing spat out his mouthful of tea, and very coincidentally, it was right onto Lu Qiyuan's whole face. He suddenly erupted into a long bout of coughing. Earth-grade alchemist? A young man who was not even 20 years old yet? That was really too shocking. Lu Qiyuan could not help but wear a bitter expression. You did it on purpose, didn't you? Smearing my whole face in revenge, right? But it was he who had first spat at Zhu Longxing, so it would not be appropriate for him to say anything in rebuke. There was naturally a beautiful female attendant who delivered a wet towel for him to wipe his face. Really? Zhu Longxing finally spoke. Lu Qiyuan sighed, thinking, am I that kind of fellow who would be willing to be spat on just for the sake of a lie? He nodded and said, listen to my advice, and don't trifle with that guy. Previously, I offended him, and was almost beaten to death by Grandpa. Hiss, so ruthless. Zhu Longxing was extremely shocked and exclaimed, Big brother Qiyuan, you're the only descendant of the Lu clan. There's nothing to be done. Just think, how old is that guy now, but yet he's already an Earth-grade alchemist. It's very possible for him to become a Heaven-grade alchemist in future. So do you think that my grandpa should give him face or not? Lu Qiyuan shook his head. Zhu Longxing's face was also filled with astonishment. When he thought that his elder sister was currently looking for Heaven-grade alchemists, and if Ling Han became a Heaven-grade alchemist, then with his sister who had a request to make of him, how would he be able to measure up to Ling Han? Perhaps, this guy might even possibly become his brother-in-law. Brother-in-law? That didn't sound too bad. With an Earth-grade alchemist, or even a Heaven-grade alchemist as his brother-in-law, how awesome was that? Thank you, Big Brother Qiyuan. I almost caused a big mess. He breathed out a breath of relief. As the day of the Prodigy tournament grew increasingly closer, there were also more and more young elite cultivators appearing in Extreme Yang City. It was inevitable that young people would be impetuous, and fights and trouble were unavoidable. However, no other fight happened in Forget Not. There was nothing to be done. 2 elites on the Prodigy roll worked here for about 10 days, and they were both about the 20th place. This made all those ranked below 20 think of this restaurant as some place sacred. If you want to make trouble here, no matter what, you should be more powerful than Xue Gucheng and Ji Derong. Moreover, even Zhu Xuan'er's younger brother met with a defeat here, yet there was no sign of Zhu Xuan'er coming here to stand up for her brother, which showed how strong the background the restaurant's owner had. It wasn't that no one had borne any devious schemes, but with 2 such shocking situations there, who would dare attempt sponging off of Forget Not? Another 20 days passed. The Prodigy tournament would begin officially tomorrow. Within the Black Tower, Ling Han finally ceased the special training for Lu Yutong and the others. Today would be for them to take a good rest, and from the next day onwards, it would a real battle. When they came out from the Black Tower, all of them exuded a terrifying aura. After this 1 month of hell training, they were practically able to kill anyone in their way, whether it was a human or a ghost. Kan Ye's cultivation was the highest. He had reached the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Guang Yuan had returned to the 9th layer as well, whereas Lu Yutong was at the 8th layer. Zhu Wujiu was the weakest, but even he had reached the 7th layer. The reason why they had managed to improve so quickly was because Ling Han had used golden needle-ferrying acupuncture points on them to stimulate their hidden potential. That was how they managed to improve so much in a mere month's time. But this was squeezing out their inner potential. It meant sacrificing their future rate of cultivation as a price, but to obtain a good ranking in the Prodigy tournament, they couldn't care about it anymore. A single person could only use this kind of secret art in their whole lifetimes. If they used it a second time, their power would still increase greatly, but the problem was that their power would continue to increase uncontrollably until their physical body could no longer contain it. Their bodies would then explode and they would die. Furthermore, this was only useful before the flower blossom tier. After breaking through to the flower blossom tier, the cultivator would have cast off his mortal shell, and this kind of technique to stimulate one's hidden potential would no longer be effective. Golden needle ferrying acupuncture points, combined with the hell training session, was what allowed them to possess the current shocking cultivation rate. Ling Han and Hu Niu, on the other hand, were still at the peak of the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Ling Han possessed 2 spiritual oceans. One turned clockwise and the other counterclockwise, as if they were 2 millstones. Thus, when his cultivation increased, his origin power was only polished to become ever sturdy, but his cultivation rate was still a bit too fast and he still needed some more time to reach perfection. It would happen within these few days. He would be able to break through to the spiritual pedestal tier. After a night of rest, all the young people gathered at the great arena of Extreme Yang City. This was the property of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, and with the enormous amount of wealth in their possession, this great arena had been constructed for the purpose of the Prodigy Tournament that would happen every 3 years. Thus, this place appeared to be very majestic and grand, and could accommodate 200,000 spectators at any one time. The circular and high spectator stands looked as if they were mountains. The first step was naturally to register. The preliminary condition for registration was to be below 30 years old. There was no other restriction. The second step was to test battle prowess. There was a stone plaque used to test one's battle prowess at the registration area. It was created by a great person in ancient times. After one shot out a full power attack at it, it would show the corresponding number of battle stars. Everyone could be ranked according to battle stars, but exactly how many would be able to make it to the actual tournament? That would depend on how many people had left the prodigy role from the last round. Subtracting those who had left due to age, as well as those that had not managed to make it in time or might even have died, the remaining people would automatically qualify for the actual tournament. There was a total of 56 this time round. Thus, a total of 144 people out of all those who came to register would be able to qualify for the actual tournament. These 200 people would draw lots based on the concept of everyone on the rankings would encounter one another and enter into a knockout battle. The last 100 remaining would be the elites of the new prodigy role of the northern region. As for how the remaining would be ranked, that was simple. They would simply battle. Every person would have a battle with the other 99 competitors, and their final rank would be calculated based on the number of their losses and victories. Then, let's go first test our battle prowess. Ling Han's group headed towards the location of the testing stone plaque. Because there was only 200 people who could qualify for the actual tournament, those ranked below 200 were naturally automatically eliminated, and there was no need for them to register. Hey! Did you all see that? A monster appeared just now. He is in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, but his battle prowess is as high as 20 stars. He can almost surge up to spiritual pedestal tier. I know that guy's name is Xueqi, but no one knows where he came from. He's very mysterious. This guy can almost stand equal to Shen Zhongcheng from the previous round. He should be slightly inferior to Shen Zhongcheng. The white-robed Sword King is one that could defeat opponents in spiritual pedestal tier. Shen Zhongcheng, too, had reached the 9th layer of spiritual ocean tier just slightly over a year ago, and he has continuously polished himself since. That was why he could slice a spiritual pedestal tier opponent with his sword, and this Xueqi may not be inferior. That's right. Xueqi is only 19 years old. They had just reached the place when they already heard the crowds embroiled in heated discussions. There would appear a few monsters with every prodigy role. The last round could deserve the name of the Golden Role, whereupon such extreme geniuses like Xuan'er, Xueqi, Lu Yang, and Shen Zhongcheng. It was yet unknown how this round would be. Chapter 433. Registration begins. Dark Angel _ Now that we're on the subject, it would still be that person this morning that's more powerful. He's already in the 1st layer of the spiritual pedestal tier when he's only 21 years old. Furthermore, his battle prowess is as high as 12 battle stars. What? There was actually someone with battle prowess exceeding 10 stars. What's his name? Shuren Ping. Never heard of him. Indeed, never heard of him. According to the information when he registered, he came from abroad. Hey. Then that means he's come from the ocean outside the North region. Really? Who knows? No wonder we never heard of him. Some of them had already arrived here early in the morning. As a result, they had not missed anything from start to finish and knew what amazing new geniuses had appeared in the process of registration. In truth, some of these new geniuses were not really that young in age. They had just missed participating in the last tournament for various reasons, but managed to make it for this one. That was very common. After all, being ranked on the prodigy roll was only an empty name. If they were at the crucial point in the fight for precious treasures, who would be willing to give up the battle and rush all the way here to participate in the tournament? Grandmaster Ling. Ling Han and the others were standing in the queue when they saw someone ahead of them call out to them, even deliberately walking towards them. Furthermore, there was quite a number, and they were precisely the few people that they had met at the Falling Moon Gorge. Gu Fenghua, Qi Hualan, Lin Xiangqin, and the others. Now that over half a year had passed, their respective cultivation levels have all arrived at the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, but not one had managed to break through to the spiritual pedestal tier yet. From the look of things, it was not that they were not able to, but rather that they were strengthening their foundations. To force their cultivation level to rise just for an empty title? That would be spoiling things through excessive enthusiasm, causing too much damage to their future cultivation. How could anyone who managed to be ranked in the prodigy roll not understand that fact? How long would they be able to maintain their pride due to being ranked on the prodigy roll? At most a dozen or so years, but they were people who could possibly break through to the flower blossom tier in future, whereupon their lifespans would be as long as 300 years, so what did a mere dozen or so years of fame count as? How could they choose to gain little at the price of a greater loss? It's been a long time. Ling Han raised his clasped hands in their direction in greeting. They all began to chat about recent events, and it was naturally inevitable that they would talk about the aggressive battle between the Rain Emperor, Yao Huiyu, and the demonic ape in the Dark Demon Forest. Anyone would want to be like Yao Huiyu. I will become the second spearmaster in this world, Su Wentong laughed. If one could be like Grandmaster Ling and become an Earth-grade alchemist, wouldn't they similarly be well-known and acclaimed all over the world? Lin Xiangqin laughed lightly, her seductive charms overflowing. She and Yin Hong had different kind of charms but achieved the same result. They were both natural beauties. This guy and Yao Huiyu are both monsters. However, one is a monster in martial arts, and the other is a monster in alchemy, Gu Fenghua said ruefully. Yet Qi Hualan said very seriously, Grandmaster Ling's talent in martial arts is not low either. All of them were momentarily stunned. They had subconsciously forgotten about his talent in martial arts primarily because Ling Han's achievement in alchemy was too dazzling since he had already become an Earth-grade alchemist at the mere age of 17. When this guy was in the Gushing Spring tier, he had already slashed an opponent at the Spiritual Ocean tier, and now that he had broken through to the 9th layer of the Spiritual Ocean tier, would he be able to defeat a foe in the Spiritual Pedestal tier? Furthermore, he was currently only 18 years old. Don't you all worry. I am not going to participate in this prodigy tournament. Ling Han smiled. You almost scared this pervert to death. If you were going to participate, you would definitely snatch one place, and perhaps I'll be out of the running as a result, Gu Fenghua said, patting his chest in an exaggerated expression of relief. Grandmaster Ling does not think that this prodigy role is worth his time. Lin Xiangqin threw him an enchanting glance, tempting one's emotions to stir. In truth, she was not actually trying to seduce Ling Han, but rather she was just born this way. Unintentionally and without conscious will, she would be tossing out seductive glances left and right. Haha, what bold words. Someone at the side immediately wanted to express their disbelief. Crossing his arms over his chest, the man wore a disdainful expression. When they saw that their eyes had turned to him, he gave himself a thumbs up. I am Diao Wende from the Bloodflame Valley. If you are unconvinced, I will thrash you all to mush. The Bloodflame Valley. No wonder he spoke with such arrogance. There were 4 most powerful parties in the North region. 1 valley and 3 sections. The single valley was the Bloodflame Valley, which even managed to develop a genius of the likes of Zhao. They were all young and rash, so they were naturally unwilling to concede and all directed furious glares at the intruder. Yet Ling Han merely waved his hand and said, You don't have to drop down to the level of such minor characters. That's right. Who are we? Why do we need to bear a grudge against this kind of minor character? If we really come up against him, we should just directly kill him in a single strike. Gu Fenghua and the others nodded respectively, yet it caused Shi Wende's face to turn ashen in fury. He had deliberately provoked them because he saw that there were a few extremely gorgeous beauties among their group. The reason why he had done so was naturally to attract the attention of the beauties, but he had not foreseen that they would completely regard him as unimportant. Damn guys, wait until you witness my battle prowess. I'll see how scared you will be then. Xuan'er thought, but restrained himself from making any move. Martial artists would naturally express themselves with their fists. Without enough power, whatever they said would merely be empty words. It's the turn of the 7 sons of the Ao clan, someone exclaimed ahead, and indeed, Ao Xinglai and his brothers filed out and arrived in front of the testing stone plaque. However, Ao Xinglai and Ao Yuanwei were already on the prodigy roll, and thus automatically gained the right to enter the actual tournament. Now that half a year had passed, there were actually 3 among the 7 sons of the Ao clan that have managed to break through to the spiritual pedestal tier. They were Ao Xinglai, Ao Yuanwei and Ao Jiancheng. Ao Jiancheng was the 7th yet actually managed to surpass those before him, which was quite strange. The remaining 5 sons of the Ao clan that did not automatically gain the right to participate in the actual tournament tested their battle prowess respectively, and they all were judged as having 15 battle stars and above of battle prowess. This showed that even though there was no increase to their cultivation level in this half year, there was much increase in their battle prowess. Furthermore, Ao Jiancheng actually had the battle prowess of 3 battle stars at spiritual pedestal tier. He would definitely qualify into the top 40 in the prodigy roll. Of course, this was based on the average battle prowess of the last tournament. It may not be a sure thing this year. I and Yuanwei want to test our battle prowess too. Would you mind? Ao Xinglai said with a smile to the few people who were responsible for registration. Of course not, please. They all nodded. They of course had to give some face to the heroes and elites on the prodigy roll. Ao Xinglai nodded and said to Ao Yuanwei, "Second, you first." Ao Yuanwei nodded expressionlessly. Ever since he had broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier, he had always been unwilling to concede to being ranked as second, and wanted very much to replace Ao Xinglai as the strongest. Yet there was never a good chance for that, so he would take advantage of this opportunity to let the latter witness his battle prowess. He drew a long saber from the weapons rack at one side. This was forged from level 5 materials, and could absolutely withstand the overwhelming power of spiritual pedestal tier. He focused, calmed himself, and after at least 3 breaths, he suddenly struck out with a powerful slash. Hong! 7 flashes of saber chi surged forth, yet they slashed the same spot on the stone plaque together with the actual blade, which focused all the attack power on such a small area whereupon it exploded. For a test like this rather than battle prowess, it would be more appropriate to say that it was a test of the most powerful destructive attack. Under normal conditions, there was no chance for you to prepare for 3 breaths before striking. If you really did such a stupid thing, who knew how many times you would have already been killed? Wang wang wang. The letters on the 5th row lit up consecutively. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 stars of spiritual pedestal tier of battle prowess. This was very uncommon, because when one had just broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier, one would naturally focus on raising one's cultivation level. When would they actually have time to polish their origin power? It was more natural to leave strengthening one's foundations for when one had reached the 9th layer. He really deserves the name of the 2nd son in the Ao clan. That kind of battle prowess would be the 7th or 8th place in the last tournament. So strong. Who knows, he may be able to surpass the eldest son of the Ao clan this time. If the 2nd son of the Ao clan could improve so much, how could it be that the eldest son can't? Let's just see how Ao Xinglai measures up. The spectators all focused their stares on Ao Xinglai. Chapter 434. Testing Battle Prowess Dark Angel _ Ao Xinglai smiled arrogantly and drew a long sword from the weapons rack. However, he did not make any kind of preparation beforehand, and instead directly struck forth with his sword. Wang wang wang. Similarly, the letters on the 5th row lit up in close succession. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 of them lit up. 5 stars of the spiritual pedestal tier. However, compared with Ao Yuanwei, one had to prepare for 3 breaths before he could strike out a blow worth 5 battle stars of spiritual pedestal tier, whereas a casual strike from the other possessed such might. There was an extremely obvious gap between the 2 of them. Ao Yuanwei could not help his expression darkening, and none of the other 5 Ao sons looked any better, either. The gap between them and Ao Xinglai was increasing further and further. "Please come here to fill in your information," one of the people in charge of registration said with a smile. Although the other 5 sons of the Ao clan were all participants of the last tournament, they did not manage to enter the ranks. Thus, they would be considered new entries every year. The 5 Ao sons advanced to fill their information. There would be another test of age later on, whereas Ao Xinglai and Ao Yuanwei were invited into the resting room. Everyone else continued to stand in the queue. Isn't that you, Kunlun? A commotion arose among the crowd. All turned in its direction, whereupon they saw a slender, tall young man's figure appear. He exuded a powerful aura that was absolutely incredible. But there was another slender, shapely, extremely gorgeous beauty beside him who was actually not suppressed by Yu Kunlun's overwhelming aura at all. Not only did her standing by his side not result in her paling in color. Instead, the comparison made her even more shiningly brilliant. "Who is that girl? So beautiful. My soul is about to leave my body just from the sight of her. She's not inferior to Fairy Zhu at all, is she?" "Hey, that's because you've never seen Fairy Zhu. If anyone who has ever seen Fairy Zhu sees any other woman after that, they would think that she was as ugly as a pig." Hey. Is Fairy Zhu really that beautiful?" When she heard the spectators' discussion, Hua Han had at first been rather pleased with herself, but the more she heard, the more her beautiful face froze over. For a beauty, the thing that she most hated was hearing that her beauty was inferior to someone else. What more when she was being looked down upon by others as if she were nothing? "Xuan'er, during the Prodigy tournament, I will disfigure your beautiful face. Let's see how you will be beautiful then," she thought venomously. Yu Kunlun advanced with big strides. His cultivation level at the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier was considered invincible among the current younger generation. Merely his aura was enough to cause one to collapse. As long as he had yet to break through to the flower blossom tier, he was still mortal. Breaching that step was really much too difficult. Perhaps, 10 years or even 20 years later, he would still be at the same level he was now. However, for now, Yu Kunlun was much too powerful. As he passed, everyone could not help but lower their heads. Firstly, it was because they were suppressed by the former's aura, and secondly, it was out of respect for someone who had once been the strongest on the prodigy roll. He brought Hua Han to the area for testing, smiling and asked, "Do you mind if I cut into the queue?" "Of course not. Of course not." How could the first place holder on the last tournament not have some special privileges? "Junior sister, please," Yu Kunlun said, smiling. Hua Han nodded and drew a sword from the weapons rack. She focused her attention and her almond eyes shone, obviously planning to make a powerful move. Originally, with her cultivation at the spiritual pedestal tier, a casual slash would be good enough. She would definitely be capable of entering into the actual tournament, but she had obviously received some provocation and intended to amaze all the spectators with a single feat. After a few breaths, she suddenly leaped forwards. Her sword struck out, and uncountable flashes of golden light actually flickered behind her figure, making a great number of the spectators turn away from the dazzling sight. Her strike hit its target and the letters on the 5th row of the testing stone plaque immediately lit up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 stars of the spiritual pedestal tier. Hiss. Everyone gasped in shock. There was a black horse again in this tournament. Someone with battle prowess at 13 stars of spiritual pedestal tier. She'd probably even be able to squeeze into the top 10, wouldn't she? Hua Han smiled proudly. Truly, she was not willing to concede to Xuan'er. What, greatest beauty of the northern region? Or, greatest genius? She had come this time to pull the latter from her high horse. "Past, please come here for registration," the person in charge of registration quickly said. Yu Kunlun smiled and asked, "Do you mind if I test myself as well?" "No problem. Of course there's no problem." When they heard the strongest person on the prodigy roll who had just left the roll express the wish to test his battle prowess, the spectators were all excited. What kind of battle prowess would the man who had once been the strongest have? Last year, it was estimated that his battle prowess had reached 17 stars. Would he now have 18 stars, or even 19. Yu Kuan-luan very quickly struck out with a slash. The letters on the fifth row lit up consecutively, and finally, 18 had lit up. 18 stars of the spiritual pedestal tier. This was the strongest battle prowess that had appeared so far. All of the crowd exclaimed in surprise. A gap of a single star of battle prowess was enough to decide the battle. So how awesome was this battle prowess of 18 battle stars? No wonder he was the strongest on the last tournament's prodigy roll. He was powerful. This was the result that Yu Kuan-luan was aiming for. Though he had left the roll, he still could not let go of that kind of glory, and no matter what, wanted to show his presence. After a bout of noise and commotion, the testing continued. This time, there did not appear any more monsters. The majority were mercilessly disqualified after testing. After all, only the top 200 in battle prowess would qualify for the actual tournament. Finally, it was the turn of Gu Fenghua and the others. They all stepped forwards to be tested, and the result was good. At least they had all stayed in the top 200. The most pitiful was Gu Fenghua. After 3 rounds of testing, the results of the first 2 times were not good enough for him to enter into the top 200, and it was only the last time when he exploded. However, he was later forced out of the ranks by someone else's results. There were only 200 places, and at least 50 or 60 would still be disqualified in the end. During the testing, one could strike a total of 3 times. The best result would be taken into account to avoid the situation in which one was overcome with nerves, leading to a below-standard performance. "I'll go first," Zhu Wujiu said and strode to stand in front of the testing stone plaque. He drew out a long sword, and used the 4 seasons sword technique. When his sword technique circulated to its maximum, he struck forth with a slash. Ji. Bright sparks flickered upon the stone plaque, and the letters on the 4th row gradually lit up. 15 stars of the spiritual ocean tier. Pass. Come here for registration. Zhu Wujiu instantly looked happily surprised. Who would have thought that 1 year ago, he was still an unremarkable disciple of Huyang Academy? Yet now he was actually able to appear on the stage of the Prodigy Tournament of the North Region. Furthermore, he only needed to win once and he would be able to qualify as a genius on the Prodigy roll. All this was because of that man. Everything was brought to him by that young man who was even a few years younger than himself. Zhu Wujiu could not help but glance back at Ling Han. He somberly bowed in his direction, his heart filled with gratitude. He internally swore that he would use his whole lifetime to repay Ling Han. Hiss, a cold sweat appeared on Diao Wenda's body. He was also on the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, but his battle prowess was only 14 stars. Kan Yi was second. What, even a handicap came? This is the prodigy roll, not the handicap roll. Ha 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 ha. Some unkind spectators immediately erupted in loud laughter, but Kan Yi was not the slightest bit angry. He merely drew a long saber, and Shua struck out with a slash. Wang, wang, wang. The letters on the 4th row of the testing stone plaque instantly lit up. 15 stars of the spiritual ocean tier. His result was the same as Zhu Wujiu, but this wasn't taking into account the fact that the heavenly luck stone in his body had yet to take effect. Thus, if he was even 1 minor cultivation layer higher than Zhu Wujiu, his talent was still much better than Zhu Wujiu. Pass. Kan Yi similarly bowed to Ling Han before heading over to fill in his information. The people who had mocked Kan Yi previously were immediately silenced, their expressions looking horrible. Those who could enter into the actual tournament were all incredible people who could definitely break through to the flower blossom tier as long as they took one more step further. Was it really a good thing to offend a flower blossom tier cultivator? There was a number of those already planning to apologize to Kan Yi later on. How could they allow someone who might break through to the flower blossom tier in the future to bear a grudge against them? And Diao Wenda's face was beginning to turn green. Chapter 435. Hu Niu's Battle Prowess. Dark Angel _. In this place, an outstanding performance would attract applause, cheers, and the favor of beautiful women. Once Kan Yi and Zhu Wujiu qualified, various beauties immediately cast seductive glances at them. Even well-bred young ladies from prestigious families like Zhang Lixian and Di Yin were no exception, though they were much more restrained in their interest. Those on the prodigy roll would definitely break through to the flower blossom tier. Who did not want to marry this kind of hero, And what party did not want to attract this kind of future elite cultivator? The flower blossom tier. In the North region, that was the absolute pinnacle of strength. I'm going now, Lu Yutong said to Ling Han. Ling Han nodded. Today was only the registration. As a result, neither Guang Yuan nor Li Xichan had come. However, when the actual tournament formally began tomorrow, they would both naturally come to cheer and support the others. The moment Lu Yutong appeared, dressed completely in white and as beautiful as a deity, she instantly entranced all those around her. There was no shortage of beautiful women, but there were not many beauties who were also talented in martial arts. Every single one of them was a limited, rare resource. It was also why Huaring Han had caused such a great commotion previously. Lu Yutong also used the four-season sword technique, and at the point when it circulated to the strongest move in its arsenal, she struck a slash at the testing stone plaque. 20 stars of the spiritual ocean tier. Instantly, shocked exclamations arose from all around. Before her, there only appeared one other monster that had 20 stars of the spiritual ocean tier, but now here was a second one. That kind of battle prowess exceeded 11 stars, which was really much too astonishing. Furthermore, this girl was so beautiful as well. A considerable number of elite cultivators that were already on the roll were also watching from the crowd, and they could not stop their eyes from lighting up. If they managed to marry such a girl, that would really be a wonderful match. For geniuses like them, they were destined to be able to break through to the flower blossom tier and possess a lifespan of about 300 years. If there was no one capable of accompanying them for these 300 years, how regretful would that be? But if they had a similarly powerful partner, that was a different story. They would be able to share life and death together, right until the end of their long lifetimes. Thus, beauties such as Lu Yutong, Huaring Han, and Lin Xiangqin were the center of much admiration, far surpassing beauties such as Jiang Lixian and the others even if they were all more or less equally beautiful. Lu Yutong bowed to Ling Han, then went off to fill in her information. This caused another bout of surprised exclamations to arise among the spectators. Why had those three all made their salutations to Ling Han? Who was this guy? One had to know that all three of them were qualified to be ranked on the roll. Diao Wenda's face twitched uncontrollably. If it wasn't for the fact that he had yet to register, he'd really want to hide his face and flee. Nyo's turn. Hu Nyo leaped off Ling Han and ran out. Pooh! At least half of the people around them laughed out loud. What joke was going on here? Even a 5- or 6-year-old little girl was joining in on the excitement. Because there was only one day reserved for registration, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion set a minimum condition for participants. They had to at least reach the Spiritual Ocean tier. If you're not in the Spiritual Ocean tier yet, what are you here for? But for a 5- or 6-year-old little girl, let alone the Spiritual Ocean tier, she most likely hadn't even awoken her spirit base. So wasn't this funny? Little girl, this is not the place for you to play. Hurry up and go back, one of the men in charge of registration said with a smile. He was being so nice and cordial for Ling Han's sake. After all, there were 3 consecutive cultivators who had a high chance of getting on the roll that bowed and paid salutations to Ling Han. Hu Nyo was extremely displeased. She put her hands on her hips, then demanded, "Why not let Nyo play? This is really not the place for you to play." That man was in a cold sweat. This kind of a little girl was really the type to pester endlessly, and would not be convinced by mere words. All around them, everyone kept laughing without stop. Hu Nyo looked very dainty and delicate, and this kind of little girl was very pleasing to their eyes. Furthermore, the childishness that she displayed was so fun as well, making them all extremely amused. Don't laugh. Hu Nyo was displeased. She was not here to play around, okay? Pang! She struck out with a punch at the testing stone plaque. Wang wang wang. The letters on the 4th row immediately lit up. 20 stars. Instantly, a powerful silence fell. Fuck, battle prowess of 20 stars of the Spiritual Ocean tier on a 5- or 6-year-old little girl. All of them had their hands on their faces to avoid their jaws from falling out of tremendous shock. Was this possible? Possible? Possible. Nyo Nyo, you can try another 2 times, Ling Han said, smiling. He was naturally not astonished by Hu Nyo's display. Hee hee. Hu Nyo laughed, and her fist became a clawed hand, which she then struck at the testing stone plaque. Wang! This time, the letters on the 4th row did not light up, but the letters on the 5th row did. 1 and 2. Merely 2 letters lit up. P, p, poo. But all around them, the spectators were all gaping with their tongues out. What did the lighting up of letters on the 5th row mean? Battle prowess of the spiritual pedestal tier. Such a casual claw from the little girl actually had the power of 2 stars of the spiritual pedestal tier. My gods, where had this monster come from? P-Pass, please come here to fill in your information, the person in charge of registration said in a trembling voice. There was a total of 8 people doing the registration, but he was the only one who could still speak consciously now, whereas the other 7 had frozen into statues. Yet Xuan'er had not had enough. Her punch and claw actually didn't manage to shatter the stone plaque. Xuan'er was very angry, and the consequences were very serious. Bite. She pounced over, opened her little mouth, bared her snow-white teeth at the stone plaque, and took a large bite. Damn! When they saw that, all those who were still stuck in a state of shock did not know what expression they should have. Such a little girl with such logic-defying battle prowess was really playing around too much? You actually used your mouth to bite the damn stone. If you battle with a foe in future, could it be that you plan to bite him like this too? Wang, following Xuan'er's bite, the letters on the 5th row lit up one by one. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. In an instant, all 20 letters had lit up, and simultaneously darkened. The letters on the 6th row were beginning to light up. My gods! At this moment, everyone had the feeling as if they had seen a pig flying through the skies. This world must have collapsed. How could there possibly happen such a crazy, outrageous thing? Haha, my eyes must have blurred, they thought. But the letters on the 6th row were still endlessly lighting up. 5, 10, 15. The whole area was in complete silence that the drop of a needle could be heard. Everyone's eyes were about to pop out of their heads as they looked at the stone plaque and Xuan'er, who was still bent over it in a very funny pose. However, not one person laughed. 18, 19, 20. Finally, there was no more change on the testing stone plaque. It had stopped at the point where all the letters on the 6th row had lit up. The flower blossom tier. 20 stars. Everyone's mouths twitched uncontrollably. If they were bitten by this little girl, then even the defense of the flower blossom tier would be rendered useless. Though the greatest destructive power did not represent actual battle prowess, as you might not be able to bite your opponent. But in case she really did, then even flower blossom tier elites would cry. Monster! That was no longer a freak, but a real monster. Bukunlun. Ao Xinglai. Zhu Xuan'er. Huaring Han. Whether they were elite cultivators on the roll, or potentially going to be ranked on the roll, they were all rendered completely speechless at this moment in time. As for the few old monsters that were standing by, they too felt their facial muscles twitch uncontrollably, feeling a faint feeling of frustration. Xuan'er's destructive power made even them wary. Only Ling Han was laughing internally. Xuan'er's little mouth was capable of even biting through the power barrier that a ruler demonic beast in the 9th layer of the flower blossom tier had set up. What powerful teeth did she have then? Yay! Xuan'er turned around and flashed a pretty smile at Ling Han. Chapter 436. Ling Han's Battle Prowess. Dark Angel _ Please come here to fill in your information, the person in charge of registration said in a shaking voice. He couldn't even speak clearly anymore, and kept biting his tongue as he spoke. Xuan'er shook her head and replied, "No, wait for Ling Han." The staff personnel turned and looked questioningly at Ling Han. Ling Han stepped out, smiled and said, "Then I'll give it a try." So many of them had already had their turn, and he also wanted to see how many stars of spiritual pedestal tier of battle prowess he had. Ling Han drew a long sword and gave it a casual wave. 7 golden rods were laid out immediately. Wang, a white snake, appeared out of thin air before quickly surging into his body. A Ray Master? This prodigy tournament would definitely be even more monstrous than the last one. All these monsters have come out. That's right. The last tournament has been known as the most glorious one in history, in which over 20 extremely powerful rookies appeared. Though there did not appear so many in this one, but in terms of quality, in terms of monstrosity, this tournament has far surpassed the last one. The spectators have all come back to themselves slightly. At first, there appeared a little girl whose bite had the power of 20 stars of the flower blossom tier, followed by the appearance of an array master. Really, this was becoming the land of monsters. What, Ling Han is actually an array master as well? After Gu Fenghua and the others had finished the test for their age, they raced back to see how Ling Han and his group were doing, and in the end, this was the scene they witnessed. Martial arts, alchemy, array arts, an expert in all arts. Does such a perfect person actually exist in this world? Lin Xiangqin, meanwhile, was love-struck. With her hands pressing down on her breast, she declared, "This man, I am definitely going to make him mine." Ling Han faced the testing stone plaque. Preparation for the mysterious 3000 was complete, and strike. Shiu, shiu, shiu. 9 flashes of sword chi surged forth, and together with the blade itself, they altogether gave rise to 1,000 sword flashes in an earth-shattering display that slashed towards the testing stone plaque. The letters on the 5th row immediately lit up. Instantly, there were 8, before gradually lighting up, and merely stopped when 11 letters had lit up. 11 stars of the spiritual pedestal tier of battle prowess. Hiss, everyone began to hiss in shock. That was because Ling Han was only in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. There had never been anyone in the 9th layer of spiritual ocean tier that could manage to deliver an attack worth 11 stars of the spiritual pedestal tier. How many stars had that surpassed? Although they saw Hu Niu's bite had the power of 20 stars of the flower blossom tier, but biting could still not be considered as an actual battle technique, could it? Yet Ling Han shook his head. In terms of destructive power, 10,000 techniques returned to one far surpassed mysterious 3,000. That technique was equivalent to fusing 10,000 sword flashes into a single flash, and its destructive power was 100-fold, or perhaps even 1,000-fold stronger. Because if one punch had 10 pounds of power behind it, then even 1,000 punches would not kill a man. But what if one could actually deliver 10,000 pounds of power in a single punch? Unfortunately, he had not yet managed to form Sword Ray, and was not able to use 10,000 techniques returned to one yet. Even if he used it forcibly now, he would only be able to deliver a strike that was fused from 10+ slashes of his sword, and that was still inferior to mysterious 3,000. P-pass. The staff member was stuttering again. Ling Han thought for a while, then said, "Let me try again." He abandoned the sword and withdrew the little Tian Yuan's spirit snake array. He walked to stand in front of the stone plaque and pressed his left hand down on it. Nobody saw when a variety of black-colored demonic patterns lit up on his palm. This had come from refining the demonic chi and originated from the Azura Demon Emperor, who was an elite from the realm of gods. Ling Han merely knew that the demonic patterns possessed tremendous destructive power, but exactly how powerful it was, he did not have a clear idea. This would be a good chance for him to give it a test. He pressed down. Wang, the letters on the 7th row immediately lit up. 10, 15, 20. And no more after that. This testing stone plaque only had a total of 7 rows of letters, and the last 3 rows were already degraded. After all, it has been millennia, or even tens of millennia of time, so it was not complete anymore. What kind of concept was the 7th row? Battle prowess of the spiritual infant tier. 20 stars of the spiritual infant tier. Air. Everyone was once again frozen into stone. One could deliver a bite worth 20 stars of flower blossoming tier, which was already shocking enough to make one's hair stand on end and feet grow cold. Yet a casual press of the hand from Ling Han was worth 20 stars of the spiritual ocean tier. What was going on here? Had something gone wrong with the testing stone plaque? Ling Han withdrew his hand and could not help but shake his head, feeling slightly regretful. He still had not managed to test out the true destructive power of the demonic patterns. True, this belonged to an elite from the realm of the gods. It might be the most powerful killing move on this plane. When he faced Azura Demon Emperor in future, he must definitely not allow the latter to clap a hand on him, or the results would be terrible. However, this should not have surpassed the limitation of a level 10 spirit tool, because the demon birth sword was obviously capable of resisting the might of the demonic pattern. Its limit might perhaps be heaven tier or deity transformation tier. Or so Ling Han thought. Sir, PP please come here to our register. That staff member was completely weak. Oh. Ling Han smiled and said, I just used a spirit tool just now, so it cannot be counted. Moreover, I have no plans to take part in the prodigy tournament. I'm only here to accompany this little girl to prevent her from causing trouble. So that was the might of a spirit tool. All of them exhaled in relief. Whether that was true or not, they were willing to believe that it was the truth. Otherwise, if a young man in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier had the battle prowess of 20 stars of spiritual infant tier, who would be able to accept that reality? Still, if you're not participating, why did you come here to give everyone a scare? Some of them suddenly recalled that though the battle prowess of 20 stars of the spiritual infant tier was definitely not completely true, Ling Han's previous strike did have the battle prowess of 11 stars of the spiritual pedestal tier. In case of one with cultivation at the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, that kind of talent was practically logic-defying. Once he broke through to the spiritual pedestal tier, what other cultivator of the spiritual pedestal tier could be on par with him? Even Yu Kuan-Luan would have to admit defeat, right? When he heard the quiet murmurs of those around him, Yu Kuan-Luan's expression looked a little ugly. As for Zhao Wendea, he was already shivering, and had completely lost all power of speech. All he wanted to do now was to dig a hole to bury himself in. Ling Han walked over and picked Hu Niu up before filling in the information for the little girl. Name, Hu Niu, age, estimated 6 years old, birthplace, not really sure. Looking at that kind of information, the faces of the staff twitched uncontrollably. Were you picked up from somewhere? Why is that your name, age and birthplace is all so weird? Niu was picked up, Ling Han picked up. Hu Niu giggled, lying in Ling Han's arms, absolutely carefree. She was picked up and she was still so happy? They really admired her for her carefree nature. However, everyone looked at Ling Han in envy. They, too, wanted to pick up a little monster like her and raise her. Afterwards was naturally the test of age, to prevent the situation whereupon someone would deliberately use disguise techniques to make themselves look young. The fairness of this tournament had to be ensured. Hu Niu naturally passed the test of age successfully. Actually, with her appearance, there was absolutely no need to test her age. No matter how one disguised themselves, there was absolutely no way they could disguise themselves to look like her, right? And now, when this day was over, the strongest 144 people would, together with the remaining elite cultivators on the prodigy roll, form a total of 200 people before proceeding with a series of knockout battles. For rookies, they were only a mere step away from victory. As long as they won the next day, they would successfully enter into the ranks of the prodigy roll, and could at least stay on the roll for 3 years. And there was another significance to entering into the prodigy roll, and that was the fact that there has never been anyone who was ranked on the prodigy roll that did not manage to break through to the flower blossom tier. Chapter 437. Knockout Battles. Dark Angel _ Breaking through to the flower blossom tier meant one would surpass one's mortal limitations. This was the dream of every martial artist, but how many would actually achieve the feat of breaking through to the flower blossom tier in this world? At night, Gu Fenghua, Qi Hualan, Lin Xiangqin and the others all came over. They had all successfully advanced into the actual tournament, which was naturally something to be happy about. They would of course have a nice celebration in honor of it, and when they came to the topic of Ling Han and Hu Niu's daytime performance, they all inhaled sharply. Too powerful. If I fight with Hu Niu in future, I definitely cannot allow her to bite me. Gu Fenghua declared with much distress. N. All of them nodded their agreement. The ferocity and violence of the little girl was enrooted deep in their hearts. Niu doesn't want to bite you all, smelly. Hu Niu was eating with much fervor, yet the fact that she could still speak clearly could not help but impress all of them. Grandmaster Ling, when did you become an array master? Lin Xiangqin gazed at Ling Han seductively, which made Lu Yutong and Li Xichan feel an uncontrollable despise for her. That's right. Are you planning to let anyone live? You're already an alchemist, you have a terrifyingly high talent in martial arts, and now you're an array master too. Gu Fenghua shared the same feelings and sighed. Compared with you, I'm close to losing my name as the biggest pervert. Fine. I have absolutely zero interest in snatching this name from you, so please rest assured. Ling Han laughed. All of them were feasting on dishes made from the ingredients grown in the Black Tower, wolfing the food down voraciously. Even Qi Hualan and Lin Xiangqin, two beauties that have been praised as deities, were no exception. They were fighting over the food extraordinarily fiercely, making everyone dumbstruck. After a good night's rest, the knockout battles finally began. They all drew lots, and adhering to the principle that no one that is already on the roll should encounter each other, formed 100 battle pairs. And these 100 pairs were further divided into 10 batches, with every battle having a time limit of an hour. If the victor was still undecided at the end of that hour, there would be an additional battle conducted after the battles for all 10 batches were finished. This was a knockout battle, so there was naturally no such thing as a tie. Ling Han, Li Si-chan, and Guang Yuan were all seated on the spectator stands, which they had paid the entrance fee of 1 origin crystal for. This was really very expensive. Even an elite cultivator of the spiritual ocean tier would have to spend a whole month to successfully refine one. Even so, there was no empty seat in this great arena. Merely from the entrance fees alone, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion would be able to earn about 200,000 origin crystals. This ability of earning money was really enough to make one exclaim in shock. Who allowed that this prodigy role was organized by them? And it was also the neutrality and the powerful background of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion that ensured that the results of the tournament would be universally recognized by all martial artists. Otherwise, no matter which sect organized it, it would be inevitable that there would be doubts whether the tournament was more partial towards their own disciples. Lu Yutong, Ken Yi and Zhu Wujiu all drew good lots and successfully avoided those on the prodigy roll. They also managed to dodge the few recognized powerful characters among the rookies. Hu Niu, on the other hand, drew Ao Xinglai as her opponent. He was originally 78th on the prodigy roll, and now had also broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier. His battle prowess was at least 5 stars. Ordinarily, if a rookie was matched with an elite cultivator on the roll, they would definitely sigh at their own misfortune. The latter managed to be ranked on the roll 3 years ago, and now that 3 years had passed, his skill would have definitely improved much. But now, everyone was filled with sympathy for Ao Xinglai. Looks like this character from the last tournament's roll would continue to wear the label of the last roll. Who did not know about Hu Niu's monstrosity now? One punch from her had 20 stars of the spiritual ocean tier, a claw had the might of 2 stars of the spiritual pedestal tier, and a single bite was strong enough to reach the level of 20 stars of the flower blossom tier. She was an absolute little monster. Ao Xinglai was indeed very strong, and also the strongest of the 7 sons of the Ao clan, but now, no one was very optimistic about him. His and Hu Niu's battle was in the 7th batch and would only begin in the afternoon, but Ao Xinglai's expression did not look very pleasant. It was not that there was no previous example when an elite cultivator on the roll was defeated by a rookie, but it was a very, very rare case. If this kind of thing happened to him, that would really be too humiliating. Please choose your weapon, the host announced. The battles for the first batch immediately began. After the 20 competitors chose their respective weapons, they began to fight at the signal. Ken Yi was in the first batch. His opponent was a skilled wielder of the spear. The latter was similarly in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier and his tested battle prowess was 15 stars. Which was at the same level as Ken Yi. But the test for battle prowess was only a display of the strongest destructive puer, and not actual battle prowess. The actual ability of a martial artist still needed to be shown through an actual battle. The two immediately engaged in a fierce battle. Ken Yi was absolutely merciless. 7 flashes of saber chi danced forth, one ferocious slash after another, and repeatedly attacked forcefully. In a single go, he shot out 81 slashes, and his opponent had not even managed to hold up his spear properly to parry when the area between his thumb and forefinger was ripped. He was left with no choice but to admit defeat. Ling Han nodded. Ken Yi had also found his own path of martial arts and possessed his own powerful style, which was to advance bravely, and would rather be broken than veer off his path. It was either his saber would slash his foes apart, or he would shatter himself. There was no third possibility. It could be called the dominating saber. An hour later, the battles for the first batch were all finished, and there were no unexpected results. All the elite cultivators on the roll emerged victorious. The second round began, and there were a considerable number of well-known challengers in this batch. Lu Yang, 9th on the prodigy roll, and also the one with the highest ranking on the roll presently. The top 8 were naturally disqualified due to their age. Chu Xiaozhu, whose battle prowess reached as high as 20 stars of spiritual ocean tier. Hua Yinghan, Yu Kuan-Luan's junior sister disciple, a new entry into the spiritual pedestal tier. Ling Han was primarily focused on Liu Yang. He was an excellent disciple of the Beast Emperor sect and had a pet beast, a frost-clouded leopard. Due to the special nature of this sect, he was allowed to battle with his pet beast. He was similar to the Thousand Corpse sect without the pet. His battle prowess would at least drop drastically by about 90%. However, Liu Yang's opponent was really too weak. He was only in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and because Liu Yang managed to win with a casual strike, he did not make use of his pet at all. 6th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, Ling Han said quietly. This was possibly the highest cultivation level in this prodigy tournament. Chu Xiaozhu and Hua Ying Han successfully advanced too, and were ranked as new members on the prodigy roll. The battles continued. Finally, an unexpected result emerged. Lo Da, ranked 42 on the prodigy roll, actually lost to a mysterious character. That person only revealed the battle prowess of a star of spiritual pedestal tier during the test, yet easily defeated Lo Da. He concealed his ability. Indeed, that person is in the spiritual pedestal tier in the first place, and as long as he displayed the battle prowess of a single battle star, it would be enough for him to make it to the actual tournament. He struck so calmly just now, so that obviously is not his true ability either. This could be another dark horse that can charge into the top 10. This person's name was Yang Jun Hao, and there was pitifully little information on him. It was only known that he is 23 years old. The test of age also confirmed that. But when Ling Han's eyes swept over him, he was astonished because this guy was shockingly in the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. In the North region, with that kind of young age to stand at such a high cultivation level, he could be claimed a genius among geniuses. The 3rd and 4th batch finished, and in the 5th batch, Zhu Wujiu appeared. After a hard battle for an hour, he finally defeated his opponent and became another member of the prodigy roll. This meant that he had close to 100% chance of breaking through to the flower blossom tier in the future, which made him extremely overjoyed. If he ever returned to Rain County, that would be the undeniably strongest level of battle prowess. In the 6th round, Ling Han saw Yu Kai Yu, his cousin. After this guy obtained the returned spirit pill, he strengthened his foundations and had already broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier, possessing exceptional battle prowess. He very easily defeated an elite cultivator from the prodigy roll. This was the 4th case of a rookie defeating a senior member of the prodigy roll in battle. Chapter 438. End of the ranking battles. Dark Angel _. In the 7th batch, the most attention-grabbing battle was of course the one between Hu Niu and Ao Xinglai. They had all witnessed the illogical destructive power that Hu Niu possessed. No matter how strong an elite of the flower blossom tier was, they would be unable to stand against her teeth. However, destructive power was destructive power, and did not represent one's battle prowess. They all wanted to see Hu Niu really fight. She would undoubtedly become everyone's strong rival. Thankfully, the other monster, Ling Han, did not participate in the tournament. Otherwise, everyone would have another person to be wary of. Ao Xinglai was very displeased. How had he managed to draw a freak like Hu Niu as his opponent? But it had already happened, and an elite cultivator like him would naturally not cower. To make the impossible happen, that was the character of a real powerful cultivator. He raised his sword to a level position, his expression serious. His opponent was only a little girl, so he was naturally not going to spout any lines that fitted the situation. No matter how fantastic his speech was, it would only make the spectators break out into laughter. Niu's super skill, invincible wind and fire wheels. Hu Niu rushed forth, her arms moving rapidly in circular motions, looking as if they were two wheels that headed in Ao Xinglai's direction. Ao Xinglai was unafraid. He was at the complete advantage in terms of cultivation level, which also meant that he was at advantage in terms of power. This was the unbreakable reality of martial arts. His sword stabbed forth as 7 flashes of sword chi surged, attacking Hu Niu from 7 separate directions. He similarly had confidence in his attack power. As long as one of his attacks hit her, Hu Niu was definitely going to be defeated. With a powerful flower blossom tier cultivator on standby, it was not possible for fatalities to happen here. Hai Niu used her high-speed motion technique, and with a flash, appeared behind Ao Xinglai. Pong, 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 the invincible wind and fire wheels, suddenly crashed onto his back. Pong, 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 pong. One punch followed another. The power of her fist measured up to 20 stars of the spiritual ocean tier of destructive power, and because Ao Xinglai had not foreseen that she could move so quickly, he had used the majority of his power in his initial stab, so the defenses on his back were unimaginably weak. Instantly, the impact of the attack made him stumble a few steps ahead, as he continued to endlessly throw up blood. No way! All the spectators were dumbstruck by the scene they had witnessed. How could there be someone possessing such rapid speed? Such absolute speed plus a terrifying destructive power was the perfect combination. To deal with this kind of attack, one could only use an area attack that had absolutely no weaknesses at any angle to prevent Hunyeo from coming closer, or counter with an absolute killing strike when she was close enough. Ao Xinglai roared in fury and hurriedly used origin power to protect his back. Bing, 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 bing. His martial intent was activated and formed multiple brilliant patterns, and he finally managed to steady himself. 20 stars of spiritual ocean of destructive power was still merely the spiritual ocean level after all. It could not possibly cause too much damage to his spiritual pedestal tier level defenses. He turned around, intending to face Hunyeo, but how could he possibly be on par with Hunyeo's speed? He turned and Hunyeo turned with him as if she was his shadow, sticking closely to his back. Bing, 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 bing. Ao Xinglai could only be thrashed. He had the mighty power of a spiritual pedestal tier cultivator, but could not use any of his power at all. Nyeo's Heaven Wolf Claws. When Hunyeo saw that her punches were ineffective, she switched to using claw attacks. This time, even Ao Xinglai's defenses were unable to stand up to her powerful attacks, and streams of blood sprayed from his back. Enough! The referee declared, calling a halt to the battle. This battle had exceeded everyone's expectations, but was within logic. Why had it been unexpected? Because the battle was so one-sided. No matter what, Ao Xinglai had still been number 78th in the last tournament roll, yet he practically was completely unable to fight back at all. However, Hunyeo was one that showed destructive power as high as 20 stars of the Flower Blossom tier, so it seemed as if the result of this battle was logical. In the 8th batch, Lu Yutong, too, successfully won her battle. Until now, all 4 people from Ling Han's party managed to successfully get a rank on the Prodigy roll. This was definitely a miracle because even such great parties like the Beast Emperor sect and the Winter Moon sect would definitely have no more than 2 or 3 disciples that could enter the Prodigy roll at the same time. What was left now was to see how far these 4 could advance. Lu Yutong, Ken Yi, and Zhu Wujiu most probably could only reach a rank beneath the top 50. But as long as Hunyeo performed like usual, she definitely had the ability to make a bid for the first place. The battles of the first day had ended, and all the new members of the Prodigy roll were out. Furthermore, out of the 56 people left behind on the roll, as many as 7 people had been defeated and lost their place on the roll, which meant that more than half of the people on the roll were new faces. This was something that had rarely happened in the history of the Prodigy roll. On the second day, the ranking battles began. Though Ling Han also went to watch, he did not care about it too much. This was only an empty name, and what was really important was to increase one's power. The battles were very intensive. Every person would have to fight in 10 battles every day, which would continue for 10 days. The result of each battle would affect the final ranking, so if one wanted to get a good rank on the roll, every single battle was extremely important. Lu Yutong, Zhu Wujiu and Ken Yi were limited by their cultivation level after all, so they were definitely going to lose against an opponent in the spiritual pedestal tier, but they were more likely to win than lose against spiritual ocean tier opponents. Only Hunyeo advanced fiercely ahead, but when she encountered Zhu Wujiu on the first day, she took the initiative to forfeit and gave the latter a win. On the 5th day, when she encountered Ken Yi, she similarly threw the battle, and on the 7th day, when she was matched against Lu Yutong, she did not. These were the only 2 battles she had lost. And on the rankings, the mysterious person, Yang Junhao, displayed absolute power, suppressing senior opponents from the Prodigy roll such as Lu Yang, Zhu Xuan'er, and Zui Yuda, and also crushed new stars like Huaring Han and Shuren Ping. At the moment, he had 98 wins and 0 losses, standing at the highest position of the first place. Lu Yang, Zhu Xuan'er and the others were ranked after him as they all had 96 wins and 2 losses. They lost once against Yang Junhao, and the second loss was against Hunyeo. Obviously, Yang Junhao had attained the first place on the prodigy roll ahead of time. The last match was the much-expected battle between Yang Junhao and Hu Niu. Unfortunately, the results of this battle would have no effect on the current rankings. After the battle began, Hu Niu still managed to get the upper hand due to her superior speed, yet her claw attacks were unable to break through Yang Junhao's defenses. Furthermore, she did not want to bite him, either, disdaining him for being too dirty. Thus, she was not able to win in the end, and the final result of the battle was a tie. As a result, Yang Junhao, with the superior result of 98 wins and 1 tie, obtained the first place in this prodigy tournament. The second was Lu Yang 97 wins. The third was Hu Niu 96 wins and 1 tie. The fourth was Xuan'er 96 wins. From the 5th place until the 10th, they were Huaring Han, Zui Da, Shiren Ping, Shenzhong Cheng, Xuegu Cheng, and Ji Derong, respectively. Can Yi was 42nd and Lu Yutong was 52nd, whereas Zhu Weijiu was 79th. Aside from them, Yu Kai Yu's rank was very high. He managed to charge all the way to the 22nd place. With a returned spirit pill to strengthen his foundations, he had indeed improved fiercely. However, everyone felt that it was very unfair for Hu Niu to be ranked 3rd. She had defeated the person in the 2nd place. Moreover, in the battle against Yang Junhao, Hu Niu had not tried her best, because she had not used her bite, which was her most powerful attack. Otherwise, it was guaranteed that even Yang Junhao would be for co-ed to his knees. But it was all right. After a year, the rankings on the prodigy roll would not be ranked this way, but rather would be ranked according to the actual battle results of the 100 people on the prodigy roll. It would take into account their spirit tools, luck, alchemical pills, and other variables. Moreover, how old was Hu Niu? She was currently only 6 years old and could still occupy the prodigy roll for a whole 24 years. In the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, she was already so powerful, so when she entered the spiritual pedestal tier, who would be able to stand against her? When the battles for the prodigy tournament ended, another big piece of news suddenly arrived. The 12 heaven mystery realms were about to open, and the 100 people on the prodigy roll automatically gained the right to enter. Fuck. When Ling Han heard this piece of news, he immediately cursed. Chapter 439. Big News. Dark Angel _ The 12 heaven mystery realms opened every 100 years, but this period of 100 years was only an estimate. Sometimes it would be 90+ years, while at others, it could be 100+ years. There was no specific date. These were the mystery realms that belonged to the North region. There were uncountable previous cases when cultivators obtained great rewards from within, which helped them to accomplish great ventures. It was rumored that the current 4 most powerful great sects had gained humongous rewards in the 12 heaven mystery realms, which allowed them to stand out and claim great success out of a multitude of other sects and ascend to become the 4 most powerful sections. Exactly what kind of rewards they had gained within, of course, the 4 great parties were not willing to divulge. This was, after all, their biggest secret. Unlike the Devil Sky mystery realm, wherein individuals could enter, there were very strict entry restrictions for the 12 heaven mystery realms. The first restriction was number, and the second restriction was the relative comparison of cultivation to age. It was not a firm ban on the age limit of those who could enter. For example, a 100-year-old spiritual infant tier cultivator could enter, but a 100-year-old flower blossom tier cultivator could not. A 30-year-old warrior in the deity transformation tier could enter, but a 30-year-old one in the spiritual ocean tier could not. To put it simply, only those that belonged to the young category of their respective cultivation levels could enter. This meant that they had great future potential. Exactly how many could enter into the 12 heaven mystery realms was not very clear, but the whole entry quota was held in the grasp of the various great sects of the North region. The bigger and more powerful the sect, the bigger entry quota they had, whereas weaker sects would have smaller quotas. In case of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, they had 100 entries quota, but they were a relaxed party that was established to do business, so what was the point of having them? Thus, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion decided to simply generously offer these entry quota to the 100 people on the prodigy roll, which could also be considered as an additional investment for the prodigy roll. This time, the 12 heaven mystery realms had opened slightly later than expected. 103 years had passed since the last time they opened. Ling Han was sullen. If he had known earlier, he should have gotten a ranking on the prodigy roll as well. That way, he'd be able to automatically obtain the qualification to enter into the mystery realms. Now, however, he would have to come up with some other way. The Alchemist Society? Or the Winter Moon Sect? If he changed his appearance and returned to the Winter Moon Sect as Han Lin, the AO clan would definitely stop him, so there was not much hope for that plan. Thus, he could only take a look at the Alchemist Society and give it a try. Ling Han immediately headed to the North Pill Pavilion. He found Lu Jitong, but the latter told him that alchemists would focus all their energies on alchemy, and their heads were completely filled with plans to improve their alchemy arts, so when would they have the time to waste inside any mystery realm? Thus, even if the Alchemist Society possessed considerable power, it did not have a single quota. So how should he get an entry then? Ling Han returned home and saw that Xuan'er was there for a visit. Apparently, a month had passed, yet because she had been occupied with the battles in the Prodigy Tournament, she had not had the time to come. Now that the Prodigy Tournament was over, she naturally could bear it no longer and raced over. Ling Han's eyes lit up. He said, "Get me an entry place into the 12 Heaven Mystery Realms and I'll give you a stalk of crimson red chilling ice grass." Xuan'er instantly looked troubled. She was only in the spiritual pedestal tier and did not yet have enough influence to affect her sect's decision on the name list for the entry into the 12 Heaven Mystery Realms. Moreover, entry into the 12 Heaven Mystery Realms could possibly change one's fate, so who would be willing to easily give up the opportunity? "Xuan'er will try her best," she said. Xuan'er immediately returned to the Half Moon Sect. For such an important thing like the entry place into the 12 Heaven Mystery Realms, she definitely had to return to convince the higher-ups of her sect, but she did not have the slightest bit of confidence that she could succeed. If the crimson red chilling ice grass was capable of completely healing her master, then the Half Moon Sect would naturally not mind using an entry place in exchange for the return of an elite spiritual infant tier cultivator. But the problem here was that the crimson red chilling ice grass was only a supplementary herb, and thinking of the few other heaven-grade spirit grasses needed, the possibility of such a feat was only wishful thinking. How could the Half Moon Sect be willing make a disinvestment like that? Ling Han did not have much hope in this method in the first place. He was waiting. Who knows, there might be some party willing to place 1 or 2 entry places on auction. Then he would only need to prepare a humongous amount of origin crystals. Lu Yutong and the others were of course willing to let Ling Han have this opportunity. Anyways, with the Black Tower, Ling Han could bring others in within. The problem was, though, that their entry places could only be surrendered, and could not be handed to someone else. A few days later, another shocking piece of news spread. The Zhang clan was seeking a son-in-law. The one they were marrying off was the beloved daughter of their clan, young Mistress Zhang Luxian, a girl who was also well known as one of the 3 beauties of extreme Yang City. It was very traditionally done, as they intended to hold a tournament for her hand in marriage. This was considered something big as well. If it was merely a tournament for her hand in marriage, it was naturally not considered a big issue. However, if one managed to successfully win the hand of the beauty of the Zhang clan, he would also be able to obtain a piece of her dowry. And it was precisely this piece of her dowry that caused a stir in the whole extreme Yang City. No, the whole North region. One of the 12 mystery realms. The key to the Sagittarius Palace Hall. As long as one possessed a key to open the 12 palace halls, then there was no need for him to go through the entrance of the mystery realm. One would only have to be at a close enough distance, then use the key to directly enter the mystery realm. Thus, the Zhang clan's quest for the son-in-law was equivalent to giving out a place of entry into the mystery realm as well as a secret treasure of the Sagittarius Palace Hall. How could this piece of news not cause a commotion in the whole North region? Within the 12 heaven mystery realms, there was abundant spiritual qi. 1 day of cultivation within was equivalent to 10s or even 100 days of cultivation outside. Furthermore, after being cut off from the rest of the world for 100 years, together with the abundant spiritual qi inside, how many spirit grasses would have grown inside? Merely these 2 factors were incredibly attractive. What more when the key to open the Sagittarius Palace Hall was thrown in as well? According to legends, who knows how many years ago, a lucky man managed to open the Ares Palace Hall and obtain the inheritance contained within. He ultimately became an elite heaven tier cultivator, but because the environment and conditions were too poor at the time and it was impossible for any shattering void tier ultimate cultivators to appear, he was stuck on heaven tier in the end, but only because of the 2 aforementioned reasons. But now, martial arts was prospering. The middle state even had several shattering void tier ultimate cultivators in their ranks. Then, if one obtained the inheritance inside the Sagittarius Palace Hall, he would definitely be able to enter the ranks of the Shattering Void tier. If one managed to step into the Shattering Void tier, there was definitely hope that he could become a god. The whole North region was stirred up. There were some that even considered the option of stealing it directly, but if one thought about it, there were now so many people who all wanted to get that key, so whoever made a move on it now was definitely going to be the target of everyone else for standing out. Everyone wanted it, so the situation now became one wherein no one dared to make a move. After all, there was still the North Pill Pavilion and the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, two such colossal establishments, on standby in Extreme Young City, so who would dare make trouble? If you managed to steal the key, then wouldn't that make you the target of scorn and provoke all the others to gang up on you? Moreover, perhaps not even the Half Moon Sect and the Blood Flame Valley dared to get into a direct confrontation with the Alchemist Society and the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Anyways, the Zhang clan had taken out the key as part of their daughter's dowry, so they'd all have to fight on the tournament stage. However, since it was a tournament for Zhang Luxian's hand in marriage, there were naturally restrictions in place. The Zhang clan had very clearly declared that challengers had to be at least below 40 years old. The old grandfathers need not come join in on the excitement. Wouldn't they feel embarrassed if they did? The tournament would be held for 3 days consecutively. 3 days later at midnight, the stage master that was still standing on the tournament stage would be the ideal son-in-law of the Zhang clan. When Ling Han heard about this, his heart was naturally moved. He had been worrying about where to get an entry place in the first place, and now the chance was set in front of him, and there was even an additional key to the treasures in the Sagittarius Palace Hall in the bundle. What was the problem here, though, was that he did not have the slightest intention to marry Zhang Luxian. He had thought of having Ken Yi, or Zhu Wu Jiu go in his place, but with their ability, AI. Hu Niu was fierce enough though, but the problem was, even if she was male, she'd be too little, wouldn't she? Chapter 440. Enter the Spiritual Pedestal Tier. Dark Angel _ The reason why the Zhang clan was willing to take out the key to the Sagittarius Palace Hall was because the Zhang clan was getting increasingly weaker as generations passed and their power in Extreme Young City was close to vanishing altogether. They were just barely surviving. Even if they had their clansmen bring the key into the 12 Heaven Mystery Realms, they'd simply be swallowed whole and robbed blind by other stronger people since they were much too weak. Thus, they decided to take the risk and find a most powerful son-in-law to turn the situation around with his help. Just think, the Prodigy tournament had just ended at this time, so this most powerful son-in-law had to be a member of the Prodigy role, so he'd have great potential in the first place. Added together with the inheritance inside the Sagittarius Palace Hall, it was practically guaranteed that he would break through and become an ultimate cultivator of the Shattering Void tier. And if some genius came forth and defeated all the members of the Prodigy role, that'd be even better because it'd mean that he was even stronger. In short, though the Zhang clan had taken a dangerous step, it was also the last plan they had to turn their current circumstances around. The marriage tournament would be held 3 days later. Ling Han sighed. Though he had 4 members of the Prodigy role by his side, he could use none of them, so he could only make a move personally. He began to break through to the Spiritual Pedestal tier. In the tournament this time, not only the male elite cultivators on the Prodigy role would participate. Even those senior geniuses that had just passed out of the role were qualified. The only requirement was for the participant to be below 40 years old, and there were abundant numbers of young men that fit this category. Yu Kuan Luan, Chao Tian Yi, Bai He Shun, these first place holders from the last Prodigy role, or even the one before last, were all qualified to fight. Thankfully, the Flower Blossom tier was a step that was too difficult to breach. Even the geniuses on the roll would need to settle for about 20 to 30 years to accumulate enough martial arts comprehension and foundations to break through in one go. For example, Ao Feng. When he was young he, too, had naturally ranked on the Prodigy roll as well, but it was only recently that he managed to break through to the Flower Blossom tier. How could casting off one's mortality be so easily done? From this aspect, Yao Huiyu was indeed awesome, and the martial arts in the Middle State were indeed flourishing extremely well according to rumors. Yao Huiyu was not the only powerful young cultivator in that region, and there were a few others who could equal him. As long as there were no Flower Blossom tier participants, once Ling Han broke through to the Spiritual Pedestal tier, who would be able to stand on equal footing with him at this cultivation level? Furthermore, he could even obtain another chance for the installation of power from the Black Tower, and if he really came up against an opponent in the Flower Blossom tier, he was still qualified to fight equally with such a character for at least a short period of time. He went into the Black Tower, entered seclusion and began cultivating. Beside him, various alchemical pills were set out. After returning to Extreme Yang City, he had been concocting alchemical pills every day. Firstly, to earn money, and secondly, to make preparations for his breakthrough to the spiritual pedestal tier. At this stage, a spiritual pedestal that could reach the heavens would be built in the spiritual ocean, and that required the support of endless energy. Thus, it was naturally necessary for a large amount of alchemical pills as well as a large number of origin crystals to be prepared. Anyone else might need 10+ days or even a month to break through to the spiritual pedestal tier, but Ling Han only planned to spend one day to complete the breakthrough. He sat down and released the restrictions on his cultivation level. Instantly, raging waves appeared in his spiritual oceans. Hong long long, they shook endlessly. Ling Han had already perfected his cultivation at the spiritual ocean tier, and expanded his Tian to its limits. It was the same for his spiritual oceans. The origin power they contained was extremely pure, without the slightest contamination. Under such conditions, even though he did not actively circulate it and only released the restrictions on his cultivation, the spiritual oceans actually automatically began the construction of the spiritual pedestals, which was proof of how harshly he had suppressed his cultivation. Hong, origin power condensed and 5-color divine light flickered, forming an incredibly wide foundation, sturdily enrooted at the bottom of the spiritual ocean. Then, the second foundation level and the third. The foundations of the spiritual pedestal were rapidly being constructed. Not one but two. Both the spiritual ocean on top and at the bottom were rapidly constructing the foundations for the spiritual pedestal. Hong long long. There was a resonant sound within his body. Around him, it seemed that Lu Yutong and the others had all heard it, and all entered into a meditative state. Constructing the spiritual pedestal to connect the heaven and earth was a process in which one could interact with the heavens and the sound of Tao would circulate within one's body, which could help other martial artists understand Tao. Thus, Ling Han had Lu Yutong and the others all wait inside the Black Tower to bask in his reflected glory. Only Hu Niu was restless. She grabbed a piece of dried meat and chewed. She was a little monster and her cultivation need only depend on the food she ate. What was comprehension? Could she eat it? Inside Ling Han's spiritual oceans, furious waves roared. They were as tall as 100 feet tall, manically crashing as if they intended to break apart the spiritual ocean. Breaking through to the spiritual pedestal tier was naturally risky, and the raging waves of the spiritual ocean were the danger of this stage. If they managed to break apart the spiritual ocean, then one's origin power would dissipate completely. Putting aside ascending to the spiritual pedestal tier, one's cultivation level might even degrade back to the gushing spring tier. But for Ling Han, this was a piece of cake. He had solidified and strengthened his cultivation level too perfectly. His spiritual oceans were sturdy, and there was absolutely no need for him to fear this kind of storm. On the contrary, his spiritual pedestals were being built more and more rapidly. If anyone else in the spiritual pedestal tier was able to see the foundations of the spiritual pedestals in his mind, they would definitely dissolve into eye-popping shock. It was too huge, wasn't it? Ling Han's spiritual pedestal had practically occupied 1/3 of the space in his spiritual ocean. How large the spiritual pedestal was for others, Ling Han was not sure, but he knew that in his last life, his spiritual pedestal had only occupied 1/100th of the space of his spiritual ocean. One could clearly imagine how shockingly sturdy he had made his cultivation in this life. The foundations of the spiritual pedestal were built level by level, and rows formed the ocean's bed. After it reached a height of about 1,000 meters above the ocean's level, it finally stopped. The first layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. In the future, he would need to build a 9-level spiritual pedestal, which would mean he had reached the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal. Then, when divine flowers bloomed on the spiritual pedestal, he would have broken through to the flower blossom tier. He opened his eyes, his gaze brilliant. Within his right eye, there was a shocking scene of multiple big stars from coming into being all the way to perishing before returning to peace. The Black Tower trembled slightly. Ling Han's skin shone, and multiple patterns were formed on it. The body of iron sheet. Ling Han was astonished. In his cultivation of the indestructible heaven scroll, he had long surpassed the body of rock cliff, but there should still be some distance before he reached the 3rd tier, which was the body of iron sheet. He had never imagined that when he broke through to the spiritual pedestal tier, it'd actually upgrade his body's physique as well. The Heavenly Luck Stone. Ling Han immediately thought of it. Only the Heavenly Luck Stone could bring about this kind of effect. Previously, when he refined the Heavenly Luck Stone, he had not obtained any benefits at all. However, the essence of nature did accumulate inside his body, and the installation of power from the Black Tower also improved the quality of his body. These benefits had completely exploded when he broke through to the next major tier. These two factors combined allowed him to ascend to the Iron Sheet tier in his cultivation of the indestructible Heaven Scroll. His current physique was as sturdy as the forging materials at the same level, which meant that he could use his body's sturdiness to stand firm against spirit tools and not be hurt. Aside from that, the maximum amount of indestructible true fluid had risen to 6 drops, which increased his ability to protect himself. Not bad, not bad. Ling Han smiled. He had been planning to change his appearance to look like Han Lin and take part in the marriage tournament. Now that his physique had reached the level of Iron Sheet, he needed not worry about not having good glove-form spirit tools for him to use. Instead, he could use his bare fists to parry against his opponent's spirit tools. My current battle prowess has reached how many stars? He mumbled. Before he broke through, his battle prowess was at about 11 stars of the spiritual pedestal tier, and now that he had broken through, even if it was a bit difficult for a spiritual pedestal tier cultivator to challenge a stronger foe, but there should be an addition of at least 5 battle stars, right? Furthermore, the Heavenly Luck Stone had taken effect, so no matter what, there should be a further addition of 5 stars. 20 stars of the spiritual pedestal tier, that was the minimum. However, 20 stars was the recognized limit of the cultivation level. There was no such battle prowess like 21 stars or 22 stars. Thus, when Ling Han was in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, his battle prowess directly soared all the way up to 11 stars of the spiritual pedestal tier. And the flower blossom tier meant casting off one's mortal chains, and was definitely not something that a spiritual pedestal tier cultivator could compare with. This thus formed a strange phenomenon. Ling Han definitely did not have the battle prowess of the flower blossom tier, yet had exceeded the limits of spiritual pedestal tier. And this was merely his battle prowess at the 1st layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. Chapter 441. Where did she experience the Dao injury? This is really troublesome. Then, after I reach the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, how many stars of battle prowess would I have? Ling Han scratched his head in wonder. With his current battle prowess, how many times would he be able to kill the Ling Han who was at this level in his last life? 8,000, or maybe 10,000 times. Ling Han could not help but think, how strong had Sword Emperor and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden been then? The problem was that though his ability to challenge a stronger person than himself was incredible, the price he had to pay was the slowing down of his cultivation rate. At the same time, for every step he took forward, the amount of origin power that he needed to accumulate could be several tens of times of any other person's. Thankfully, I have an immortal grade spirit base, and am an alchemist as well. Otherwise, if I had to strengthen my foundations to such a strong, firm extent, I may not be able to reach the flower blossom tier in this lifetime. He shivered at the thought. Congratulations, young Master Han. When they saw Ling Han stand up, Lu Yutong and the others all offered him their congratulations. Ling Han nodded and said, "You all must continue to persevere, and cannot fall too far behind me." Yes. Including Guang Yuan, they all nodded. If they were unable to help Ling Han by sharing his burdens and help him in times of difficulty, they'd lose face too. They would have gained so many benefits from Ling Han, but done nothing in return for his great generosity. All of them exited the Black Tower, and exactly 1 day had passed since they entered. The marriage tournament that the Zhang clan was holding had yet to begin. After a day, Xuan'er came, but her face was filled with disappointment. She said, "Grandmaster Ling, can you change your condition?" Obviously, the sect had rejected using an entry place to exchange for a level 7 spirit grass. It was not that a level 7 spirit grass was not valuable enough, but rather that the uses for the crimson red chilling ice grass were quite limited. Aside from being the main medicinal ingredient for a pill to heal one's spirit base, it could only be a supplementary ingredient for the hidden tiger heavenly luck pill. Thus, only when it encountered a person that needed it would this kind of spirit grass show its incredible value. If it was capable of increasing one's cultivation level at the spiritual infant tier or increase one's comprehension of the Tao of martial arts, just see if those old monsters of the half-moon sect would be so incredibly proactive. Ling Han thought for a moment then said, "All right, then I'll exchange it for some information." Xuan'er was surprised. Mere information was enough to exchange for a level 7 spirit grass? Previously, Ling Han had fought so fiercely with her over it, so this did not seem logical. Could it be that actually, he bore a fondness for her, and so used the means of letting the reins loose only to grip them better? "May I ask, what does Grandmaster Ling want to know?" she asked. "How did your master get injured?" Ling Han was very curious. Logically speaking, there could not possibly be any powerful ultimate cultivators of the Shattering Void tier in the North region, but if it was not the action of an ultimate cultivator at the level of the Shattering Void tier, how had one in spiritual infant tier had his Tao wounded? Anyways, he already had full confidence that he could get that key from the Zhang clan, so he naturally no longer cared about getting an entry. He only hoped that the Zhang clan's key was not some other toy left from one of Jiang Yufeng's shenanigans. If that was the case, he'd really be horribly played by his own disciple. Xuan'er could not resist a swift change in her expression. Even with a white silk veil covering half her face, the change in her eyes was still visible. After a while she finally spoke, "My master." She discovered an ancient historical site. It was in the process of investigating it that she was wounded by the restrictions there. Ling Han clapped once and said, "So that was indeed the case." There were no Shattering Void tier cultivators in the North region, so how could a powerful cultivator of the spiritual infant tier experience a Tao injury? The only possibility left was being injured in an ancient historical site. When she saw Ling Han's excited expression, Xuan'er instantly felt displeased and said, "Grandmaster Ling, please show some respect to my master." Ling Han laughed, drew out a stalk of crimson-red chilling ice grass and placed it on the table. He had long since harvested 2 stalks of crimson-red chilling ice grass to prevent them bearing fruit which would make them unusable for medicine. The 3rd stalk did bear fruit though, which he once again planted. In the future, 3 would become 9, 9 would become 27, and soon enough, he would have overwhelming numbers of this particular spirit grass. Xuan'er's beautiful eyes immediately lit up, and she stretched out a hand to take it. Ling Han raised his right hand, which caused her hand to miss its target. "Grandmaster Ling, what is the meaning of this?" Ling Han placed the stalk of the crimson-red chilling ice grass back onto the table and asked, "Where is that ancient historical site?" Xuan'er hesitated slightly, but when she recalled that even her master incurred a Tao injury within, it was obvious that no matter how big the fateful opportunity there was within, it was not to be hers nor her master's. Thus, she answered decisively, "Agriculture enclosed mountain, Eaglewood Valley." Ling Han nodded and raised his hand, leaving the stalk of crimson-red chilling ice grass on the table. Xuan'er hurriedly stored the spirit grass into her spatial ring and looking overjoyed said, "Many thanks, Grandmaster Ling." Ling Han flicked his hand in response and said, "You may go." Xuan'er's face could not help but twitch. How displeased was he to see her that he would actually attempt to chase her off. Yet, of all things, that apathetic attitude did not seem faked, which made her even more depressed. Women were really weird. Just now, she had misunderstood that Ling Han bore a fondness for her and was worried that Ling Han would do something to her, and now that Ling Han paid absolutely no regard for her, she was depressed. AI. She was a bit irritated internally and asked, "Grandmaster Ling is probably getting ready to become the ideal son-in-law of the Zhang clan, right?" Otherwise, Ling Han would not have changed his condition and easily handed the crimson-red chilling ice grass to her. Ling Han laughed and countered, "So what if I am jealous?" "In your dreams." Xuan'er merely humphed lightly and said, "In the marriage tournament the Zhang clan is holding this time, not only will the top 10 members of the prodigy role participate, even the elites from the last few prodigy roles would appear. Though they all have yet to break through to the flower blossom tier, their ability is still outstanding. Perhaps some might even have reached the level of having half a foot into the flower blossom tier." Ling Han merely smiled. His current ability probably reached the level of having half a foot into the flower blossom tier, and in future, he would possibly get endlessly nearer the flower blossom tier. So what if there appeared some cultivators at this level? He'd still thrash them as per usual. Xuan'er's beautiful eyes turned. She suddenly asked, "Does Grandmaster Ling want to see Xuan'er's real appearance?" "What the hell was that?" Ling Han looked at her in surprise, but Xuan'er merely smiled slightly, stood up and left, saying, "Whenever Xuan'er is in a better mood, who knows, I may allow Grandmaster Ling a glimpse at my true face." After saying so, she left with a twist of her slender waist, incredibly graceful in her movements. Little demon. Even if Ling Han had his whole heart and soul focused on martial arts, when he saw her captivating rear view, powerful desire rose within him. He felt an impulse to rush out and push her down onto the ground, then, he hurriedly restrained his mind. Who said that a quiet, elegant woman did not know the art of seduction? On the contrary, when one who normally assumed a serious, refined manner, then suddenly showed a flirtatious expression, that would only be even more alluring. Indeed, every beauty was transformed from a vixen, and it only depended on whether she wanted to use her seductive charms or not. Another day passed, and the marriage tournament of the Zhang clan had officially begun. Ling Han brought Lu Yutong and the others to watch the excitement. Anyways, the tournament would be held for 3 days, so there was no need for him to participate right at this very moment. It would not be too late even if he waited until the 3rd day. Furthermore, he would be taking part as Han Lin, and would run the moment he got the key. As for the Zhang clan, he would have compensation for them in future. Is there still any need to compete? It would definitely be the first place of the prodigy role. Yang Junhao. He has defeated all the young elites of the North region. The tournament is a tournament, but now, there is no restriction on using any kind of spirit tool, so every person's battle prowess would be greatly different. Furthermore, before ascending the tournament stage, there is a need to first sign a life or death agreement. That would be a battle to the death. A battle to the death is completely different from mere sparring. In addition, the young male elites who have matured may also participate. Should Yang Junhao want to carry off the beautiful maiden as he hoped, it would be difficult. That's right. This marriage tournament would definitely be even more exciting than the prodigy tournament. The Zhang clan rented a site on the great arena for the marriage tournament, and the Spirit Treasures Pavilion also took advantage of the opportunity to earn additional profit. Whether one entered the site as a spectator or as a participant, they would need to pay a single origin crystal. Ling Han paid the entrance fee and entered to watch the tournament. There was indeed nothing much notable about the battles on the first day. Most of the participants were those that had not managed to make it onto the prodigy role, and were here to show off some of their skill to make their presence known. And it was precisely because of this that the Zhang clan and the Spirit Treasures Pavilion worked together to change the rules of the tournament stage. Chapter 442. Ascending the stage and participating in battle. The rules changed. To come up onto the tournament stage, one had to first pay 10,000 origin crystals. If one could attain 10 consecutive wins, then the origin crystals would be refunded, and he would also qualify to take part in the next round. In addition, if one could manage to stand for a whole hour on the stage, that could also be considered equivalent to 10 consecutive wins. This was the qualification battle. It would continue for 3 days, and the semi-finals would take place 3 days later. All martial artists that obtained 10 consecutive wins would engage in a knockout battle, and the final victor would be the ideal son-in-law of the Zhang clan. When he heard that piece of news, Ling Han could not stop his facial muscles from twitching madly, as he thought that the Spirit Treasures Pavilion was indeed very well versed in earning money. They managed to come up with so many tricks for even a marriage tournament. First would be the preliminary rounds, followed by the semi-finals. They had practically organized it like it was a second prodigy tournament. However, he had to admit that this was much more attractive than before, and the battles were even fiercer now. Furthermore, both the Zhang clan and the Spirit Treasures Pavilion could earn a great profit entrance fees, as well as the participation fees would be enough to ensure they made a lot of money. Those who were short of skill would naturally no longer choose to step up onto the tournament stage. If they did, they'd have to pay 10,000 origin crystals, and who would have so much money to splurge? In addition, the preliminary round would only last for 3 days, so those who had the mind to would naturally not wait until the 3rd day to join the tournament. What if they didn't have enough time? Powerful cultivators emerged one after another. Yang Junhao, Lu Yang, and Yu Kuan-Luan all made a move. They possessed absolute battle prowess and no one dared to step up to challenge them, which allowed them to successfully qualify for the semi-finals after only standing there for a whole hour. Ling Han had no intention to act today, because he had yet to change his appearance. he decided to simply watch the excitement. The first day came to an end. Those with high ranks on the prodigy roll all qualified for the next round, and there was a considerable number of well-known characters who also easily passed to the next round. In comparison, these people that had towered on the prodigy roll some years ago were even stronger. They had, after all, cultivated a few more years. Beneath the flower blossom tier, one could not discount the gap of several years. On the second day, Ling Han changed his appearance to look like Han Lin, then separated from Lu Yutong and the others and entered the great arena alone. He paid a single origin crystal, and entered the arena. Grandmaster Ling. A delicate feminine voice was suddenly heard from behind him. Ling Han turned around. Pretending to be surprised, he said, "Are you calling me?" A surprised expression immediately appeared on Ing Hong's beautiful face. This person was actually not Ling Han. She smiled faintly and said, "Apologies, I thought you were someone else." She immediately mumbled, "How could they look so much alike?" Ling Han sighed. He had only changed his facial appearance and did nothing to his build. Those familiar with him would very easily think that he was Ling Han if they merely looked at his rear view. It was like that with Ao Feng, and Ing Hong now was the same. Ling Han arrived at the registration area, drew out 10,000 origin crystals, and recited his personal data. Han Lin, 20 years old. I came from Return Cloud Mountains. He received a challenger's tag, which showed that he had made the payment. When he stepped up to battle later on, he needed only hand over this tag. In addition, if he won 10 consecutive battles, he would also need this challenger's tag to get his refund of 10,000 origin crystals. If one lost it, then very sorry, one could only think of it as very bad luck. He was naturally unreserved. It just so happened that a pair of fighters had just finished their battle on the tournament stage. Thus, he immediately leaped up onto the tournament stage. Challenger's tag. The referee instantly stretched out a hand towards him. Ling Han tossed his challenger's tag over, and the referee grabbed it. After checking it once, the latter nodded, then said, "Let's begin." "Brat, you can't possibly be my rival. You had better obediently step down on your own, which would also save me some energy." The opponent was a sturdy man who looked to be in his 30s. He was tall and well-built, and was at least 2 heads taller than a typical man. Those who dared step onto the tournament stage to fight were definitely people with at least some skill. This man had broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier, and though he was only in the first layer, he could be considered elite among those below 40 years old. He had cultivated 10+ years more than Ling Han. This was a huge advantage, so, of course, he was very confident in himself. Ling Han smiled calmly and asked, "Why could it not be you that has to step down?" "Ignorant brat." The man humphed and said, "Forget it, I'll be able to kill you with a single punch anyways, so it's fine. Since you are disobedient, I will kill you." He raised his fist and shot it heavily towards Ling Han. Killing intent flashed through Ling Han's eyes. Since that was the case, there was no need for him to be merciful, either. He casually threw a punch. Hong, a terrifying origin power appeared, broad and mighty, with multiple patterns on display, shining brilliantly. Pang! What? Impossible! That man's fist was crushed the moment Ling Han touched it. A bloody mist burst out, and Ling Han's fist also crashed onto the front of his body. The terrifying origin power created a shockwave that directly blasted him into a shower of blood. Hiss! There was dead silence over the spectators' stands. An elite cultivator of the spiritual pedestal tier actually exploded with a single blow. That was too much, wasn't it? But after a mere instant, excited cheers arose from all around. The reason why they were seated here was so that they could see such a ferocious, bloody, and violent scene, wasn't it? Han Lin won win. The referee announced loudly after glancing at the name on the challenger's tag. Han Lin? Who's Han Lin? With such power, it would be enough for him to enter into the top 20 on the prodigy roll, but we obviously hadn't seen him before. I know him. This person is a newly accepted disciple of the Winter Moon sect, who defeated all the 7 sons of the Ao clan the moment he joined. What? Even the 7 sons of the Ao clan could not stand against him? No wonder he's so awesome and managed to crush his opponent of the first layer of the spiritual pedestal tier in a single punch. That's odd. Why didn't he participate in the prodigy tournament? Perhaps it's because the Winter Moon sect doesn't want him to overshadow the glory of the 7 sons of the AO clan, and did not allow him to take part. That's right. The patriarch of the AO clan is a powerful cultivator of the spiritual infant tier of the Winter Moon sect. If he spoke up, then no matter how much of a genius Han Lin was, he could only swallow his resentment. When they saw how the spectators were all engaged in fierce debates, the expressions on the 7 sons of the AO clan all turned ugly. They had not imagined that Ling Han would actually appear here. They had all had their teeth completely beaten out of their mouths by Ling Han, and though their teeth had regrown by now, how could they forget the pain he had brought by smacking them in the face? Moreover, the latter had even killed their younger sister. Father had not yet killed off this brat. The 7 of them were all filled with confusion. With the ability of the Flower Blossom tier, not only was he unable to kill off a brat in the Spiritual Ocean tier, the latter was even allowed to break through to the Spiritual Pedestal tier. Furthermore, merely how much time had passed. Yet this person had already broken through to the Spiritual Pedestal tier. This speed was really much too astonishing. Ling Han stood somberly and waited to be challenged by another. However, the power of his punch previously was too shockingly mighty, and for the moment, no one dared to step forth to challenge him. Even if there's some who were certain that they were in no way inferior to Ling Han, they had no plans to engage in a fierce battle with Ling Han at this moment. After all, the tournament rules had changed, so it was not necessary that they fight over this place to qualify for the next round. Right until when the hour was almost up, a man jumped onto the tournament stage. This was a middle-aged man who had a fair, unbearded face. His hair was ash gray as if he was already in his twilight years, but from the way his skin was smooth and compact, he did not look at all like one who had experienced a fair number of years. Quick sword Xuan'er! Someone exclaimed in surprise when they looked at the stage. It really is him. I heard that this person has no aspiration for empty fame. He obviously has the ability worthy of the prodigy role, yet has never taken part in the prodigy tournament. However, his quick sword is universally shocking, and it's said that there is no one on the same cultivation level that can defend against his quick sword. Though that's a bit of an exaggeration, it is proof of his ability. This would be a good show. Quick sword Xuan'er has already broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier 5 years ago, and with his talent, no matter what, he should be at least in the 4th or 5th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, shouldn't he? Hee. Looks like this Han Lin is going to be in trouble. Chapter 443. An Easy Victory. Dark Angel _ The spectators were all not very optimistic about Ling Han. Although he had ferocious power behind each single punch, the person he had killed was only in the 1st layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, and was not someone like Quick Sword Xuan'er who had a well-established reputation. Who knew how many spiritual pedestal tier cultivators had been slashed by his blade? Xuan'er, kill him. Don't disappoint us. Some particularly fierce people among the spectators had already begun to call out wildly. The reason why they had spent a single origin crystal was precisely because they wanted to see a bloody battle. Xuan'er was unmoved, and merely stared fixedly at Ling Han. He said, "You're very strong. You're qualified to make me battle with my full ability." "Oh, then are you qualified to make me attack at my full ability?" Ling Han asked, smiling. He truly hoped that there was someone in the spiritual pedestal tier that could force him to the fullest of his ability. He currently felt a loneliness from standing at the very top in a solitude like snow. "Watch my sword." Xuan'er moved. At some moment, a sword had suddenly appeared in his hand. The blade was as thin as a cicada's wing, and with a move of his wrist, the tip of the blade had appeared at Ling Han's left shoulder. It was indeed shockingly fast. It's too fast. He really deserves the name of Quick Sword Xuan'er. It's finished. Han Lin is going to be defeated by a single strike. The spectators called out in excitement. However, the fact that Xuan'er aimed for the Ling Han's left shoulder rather than his heart made a large number disappointed. It would have been a greater spectacle if his stab killed him. Ling Han smiled lightly, and with a grab of his right hand, his opponent's thin sword had appeared in his hand. Xuan'er's expression changed drastically. His sword was already as fast as this. How had his opponent managed to grab it? He quickly drew back his sword, confident that the sharpness of his snowy wing sword would be enough to inflict a serious injury to Ling Han's hand. Yet he immediately realized that it was as if snowy wing sword had sprouted roots in Ling Han's hand, and he couldn't move it even the slightest bit. Ling Han slowly raised his left fist. Xueqi was very clear that if he abandoned his sword and stepped back now, he could dodge this punch. But as a swordsman, he would live and die with his sword. He did not abandon his sword, and merely continued to draw it back as hard as he could. Unfortunately, even though he was in the 6th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, his strength was not as powerful as Ling Han's, and no matter what he tried, he could not draw his sword out of the latter's grasp. His eyes froze, and he decided to simply push the sword forward to pierce directly through Ling Han's left shoulder. But that was a pointless effort. Xueqi was still an expert swordsman, after all. With a loud shout, the tip of his blade actually formed 7 flashes of sword chi that asterisked towards Ling Han. With such a short distance between them, how was he supposed to dodge? Ling Han smiled and made no attempt to dodge at all. He merely tilted his head at a slight angle and did not allow the sword chi to hit his eyes. Shwa, 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 shwa. The 7 flashes of sword chi landed solidly on him, but because he had now formed body of iron sheet, the toughness of his physique was comparable to that of forging materials of the same level. The 7 flashes of sword chi streaked over him, yet did not even leave behind a slight scratch. Pooh! When they saw this scene, everyone choked. What kind of terrifying defense was that? Sword chi was formed from a combination of the martial artist's personal strength, his comprehension of sword arts, and the medium. Xueqi was in the 6th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, so there was no need to elaborate on his personal strength as he definitely had to be very strong. Furthermore, since he could form 7 flashes of sword chi, his comprehension of sword arts was definitely not poor. Lastly, his snowy wing sword was a level 5 spirit tool, and was definitely not a weak weapon. But even with all these, he could not manage to leave a scratch on Ling Han at all. Fuck, is this guy still human? This guy's skin must be forged from precious metals, right? How could he be unmarred even with this kind of sword chi? This kind of defense is practically enough to make one lose all hope. Who could manage to break through this kind of defense? The spectators outside the arena all exclaimed in shock. Some even had their hands cupped around their faces, showing expressions of absolute disbelief. But not everyone was so. For example, Lu Yang, Xuan'er, and Yu Kuan-Luan all showed expressions of eagerness to battle. This kind of opponent was really worth fighting. They all had very high confidence in themselves and believed that they were all invincible when facing an opponent from the same cultivation level. Ling Han shot out a fist, and with a pong, it landed on Xueqi's face, which instantly knocked him out. The latter had not borne any killing intent, so he had pulled his punches. Han Lin wins, the referee announced. After defeating Xueqi, although Ling Han had not managed to accumulate 10 consecutive wins, it had already reached the time of 1 hour, and he had naturally obtained the qualification to enter the next round. He descended the tournament stage and returned to the arena. He could clearly sense that there was a considerable number of heated gazes on him, which made him feel slight ache. This was not a physical pain, but rather a mental one. The battle intent of Yang Junhao and the others was too fierce. Ling Han merely smiled calmly. Currently, who would be able to threaten him among the spiritual pedestal tier? Unless the Sword Emperor or the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden appeared once more and returned to the spiritual pedestal tier, perhaps they would be qualified to fight him. After all, he could be a monster, but so could the Sword Emperor and the others. The Heaven Sword Sect was an ancient great sect that had relations with the realm of gods. In his last life, only 7 people managed to break through to the Heaven tier, which showed how monstrous the Sword Emperor and the others were. On the 3rd day, Ling Han did not appear at the great arena. He did not need to know what kind of elite cultivators there were among his future opponents or observe their strongest moves. Anyways, whoever appeared in front of him, he only need to throw them out of the battle with a single punch. Another day passed, and the semi-finals began. A total of 49 people had qualified for the semi-finals. Thus, in the first round, there would be 15 who would automatically pass to the second round, and the remaining 34 would have to fight to decide on who would be the final 17 to qualify for the next round. However, who would automatically pass was not decided by a drawing lots, but rather by the Zhang clan. This was naturally unfair, but who asked them to be the organizer of this time's marriage tournament and have the absolute power to decide? As a result, the The new and old first-place holders of the prodigy role like Yu Kuan-Luan, Yang Jun-Hao, and Chao Tian-Yi all passed without a doubt. It was the same for young geniuses like Ling Han and Lu Yang. Obviously, the Zhang clan was optimistic about them and did not want them to be knocked out in the first round. Unfortunately, the Zhang clan only had one key. If not, they did have quite a number of young girls of marriageable age in their clan. The first round ended, and the main name list of 32 participants finally emerged. Though only men could participate in this marriage tournament, one look at this name list and it was clear that this was definitely an even more awesome tournament than this time's prodigy tournament. There was a considerable number of generations of the top 10 from the prodigy role, and together with an extreme monster like Ling Han, there was another that had drawn public attention. Yet no one knew what he looked like. That was because he wore a mask, but his build seemed to be quite small, and was obviously half a head shorter than the average person. His name was Zhang Shan, which was obviously a false name. Ling Han glanced him over, and was sure that the latter was in the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. He also faintly had an aura that Ling Han disliked. The second round of battles began. Ling Han was the 7th to fight, and his opponent was the white-robed sword king, Shen Zhongcheng. The previous few battles quickly concluded because the organizer had tried their best to arrange it so that it would be a very powerful participant against a much weaker opponent. For the battle between Ling Han and Shen Zhongcheng, did they think that Ling Han was at an absolute advantage, or at an absolute disadvantage? Ling Han ascended the stage and nodded at Shen Zhongcheng. He had a slightly favorable impression of this particular swordsman. "Please," Shen Zhongcheng said seriously. He had seen Ling Han's moves previously, and knew that the latter was very powerful. Ling Han clasped his hands together and said, "Please." Shen Zhongcheng drew his sword. Chong, a brilliant sword flashed soared to the heavens, and instantly, an additional 7 flashes of sword chi appeared, which all swept towards Ling Han. Ling Han did things simply and roughly. He faced the oncoming attack directly and raised his fist to deliver a series of fierce punches. Bang! 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 He merely shot out a consecutive 7 punches and had not even circulated fist chi yet when the impact of his strike caused the long sword in Shang Zhongcheng's hand to fly out of his grasp, and with that, he was defeated. Chapter 444. Lu Yang's strongest move. Dark Angel _ Shen Zhongcheng, 29th on the last prodigy roll. In this tournament, he managed to advance even further and squeeze into the top 10. He reached the 8th place this time. The name of the white-robed sword king resounded all over the world, and with him being merely in his early 20s, it was highly possible that he would become one of the leaders of the new generation of the North region. And it was precisely this kind of outstanding genius that was completely suppressed and thrashed easily by another. A consecutive bout of 7 punches was enough to defeat him. What kind of concept was that? A shocked stillness fell upon all the spectators. How did the Winter Moon sect come to possess such a freak? Against an opponent in the same cultivation level, 7 punches were enough to defeat Shen Zhongcheng. If he actually broke through to the spiritual infant tier, then wouldn't that mean that he could sweep away all those in the same cultivation level and be invincible for an era? "I've lost." Shen Zhongcheng coughed up blood. Though he had not suffered too serious an injury, he had still been attacked quite harshly. However, a heated battle intent continued to burn within his eyes. "I will make you my aim, and one day, I will definitely defeat you." "I wish you good luck," Ling Han said, smiling. He wouldn't be using this identity for too long, and in future, Shen Zhongcheng would have to seek out an inexistent person for a battle. Just the thought of it made Ling Han pity him a bit. Shen Zhongcheng stared at Ling Han for a moment longer before finally turning around and leaving. Heavens, so powerful. If this guy actually took part in the prodigy tournament, he'd definitely have the ability to attempt seizing the first place? Perhaps he does not think the prodigy role is important at all? That's right. I remember there was a powerful guy who previously delivered a palm strike worth 20 stars of the spiritual infant tier of battle prowess, but he absolutely disdained taking part. What? 20 stars of spiritual infant tier? Are you kidding me? Hee hee, you can make some casual inquiries. Who else doesn't know about that? With that kind of ability, there is of course no need for him to participate in the prodigy tournament. That would practically be playing around with kids, and much too degrading. That may not be the case. That person said that he had used a spirit tool, which was what allowed him that kind of battle prowess. I, too, am more willing to believe that theory. In the midst of the conversations of the spectators, the battles proceeded. The senior elite cultivators had indeed not wasted their years spent cultivating. Even if they had similar battle prowess of the same cultivation level with their opponent, their cultivation was much higher, and they had all reached the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. Furthermore, they had all stayed at this level for a certain period of time and strengthened their foundations to an incredible extent. Thus, the senior elite cultivators all qualified for the next round, and only a very few rookies managed to display outstanding performance with even more powerful battle prowess. For example, Liu Yang, combined with his pet demonic beast, possessed amazing battle prowess. There was also Yang Junhei. Obviously, this was his first time taking part in the Prodigy tournament, yet he had the peak cultivation of the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. They did not allow the mature generation to be the only outstanding people. In addition, there was also Ling Han and that masked man. The vigor of the younger generation was in no way inferior. The second round of battles concluded, and the third round quickly began right after. This time, Ling Han's opponent was Liu Yang, ranked second in the Prodigy role this year. Being able to defeat Xuan'er, someone whom many had expected to be the first place this year, there was of course no need to doubt Liu Yang had powerful battle prowess. However, the person he now faced was Ling Han, whose battle prowess had surpassed the upper limits that could be calculated in the spiritual pedestal tier. Obviously, he was destined for a tragic ending. He and his pet demonic beast, frost-clouded leopard, ascended the stage together and stood unyielding like a mountain. Liu Yang was a powerfully built man. In such cold weather, he had still worn a short robe, which exposed his broad shoulders. It was as if they were forged from rock. He seemed like he could topple the mountains and crack the earth with a casual punch. And the frost-clouded leopard looked even mightier. Its body was 3 meters long and reached a height of 2 meters. It was completely covered with a snow-white fur coat like it was excellent fine satin. With every exhalation, frost would immediately appear in the surrounding cold air, which rustled down onto the stage. Han Lin, I cannot help but admit, you are the strongest opponent I have ever faced. Liu Yang stared at Ling Han. You are worthy of a full-effort battle from me. I'll use a powerful move that I had not used even in the Prodigy tournament some days ago. When they heard his words, the spectators were all astonished. This guy had already charged all the way to the second place of the Prodigy role, and he actually had not used all his ability? He actually still had a powerful move in reserve? Hiss, why hadn't he used it then? Could it be that he did not want to take the position of first place? Wrong. Since it's the most powerful move, he will of course not use it easily. Otherwise, if others knew of it beforehand, they could stay on alert in advance. It's fine even if he was ranked second in the Prodigy tournament. Anyways, the rankings would be rearranged again next year, and he would only need to show enough battle prowess and he'd still be able to turn the tide around and get first place. Now, for the sake of the key to open up the 12 Heaven Mystery Realms, he can no longer afford to care about that. Of course. As long as he could obtain the inheritance inside, he could possibly become an ultimate cultivator of the Shattering Void tier in future. Anyone would put their best effort in for that kind of reward. Yeah, I had initially thought that Han Lin was definitely going to win this battle, but there seems to be a bit of suspense for the end of this battle now. It'll be more exciting with a little suspense. Ling Han smiled and said, Oh, then I hope you will not be disappointed. He currently was invincible among all those in the same cultivation tier, and felt a cold solitude. If there was somebody who could give him some trouble, he would in fact be very pleased. As you wish, Liu Yang declared darkly. He suddenly leaped and charged towards Ling Han in attack, his hands forming a seal, and shouted, 3 lives 3 destructions, life and death reincarnation seal. Hong, his palms formed uncountable numbers of tiny patterns which transformed into multiple simple, unadorned letters. Then they all shot out and shadowed Ling Han. This really was a little omnipresent, and cut off all paths of retreat for Ling Han. Ling Han looked disappointed and asked, This is your strongest move? He shot out a punch in a very simple attack, but an endless shock wave of power spread out. Pong, 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 and these letters were instantly destroyed. Liu Yang looked slightly surprised. Though he had not thought to use this one single move to defeat Ling Han, but the fact that the latter had so easily and delightedly dispersed his move still made him slightly shocked. However, he did not disappoint Ling Han, and immediately formed another seal and struck towards Ling Han. Ling Han stood at the same spot, neither dodging nor ducking. He merely shot out another casual punch that easily dispersed Liu Yang's attack. He yawned and said, "Are you going to use your strongest move or not? If not, I'm going to throw you off the stage then." When they heard these words, the spectators all hissed. How humongous was the tremendous gap in power between the two of them that caused Ling Na to say something like that? This guy was so ferocious and powerful, so was there anyone else who could stop him now? Liu Yang humphed and said, "Since you want to see it so much, I shall let you experience it then." He once again pounced, and this time, that leopard actually moved as well. In an instant, it had raced to stand behind Ling Han. It opened its mouth and a white light shot out. It had not yet touched Ling Han's back, yet the endless iciness in its breath was already circulating, which instantly froze Ling Han where he was standing. Layer after layer of ice appeared at a visible rate, which instantly sealed Ling Han inside a 3 feet tall, 1 foot wide ice pillar. However, after this move, light left the frost-clouded leopard's eyes as well. It was as if it had lost a considerable amount of weight from its body, and could not help but lie on the ground. So this was Liu Yang's strongest move. Obviously, the frost-clouded leopard could only use this kind of powerful move once in a short period of time. If it was not able to freeze its opponent, then the pet demonic beast would lose all ability to fight. Furthermore, the disciples of Beast Emperor sect depended very much on the battle prowess of their pet demonic beast. If their pet demonic beast was unable to fight, then there would of course be a tremendous reduction in their battle prowess as well. Chapter 445. Qualifying for the Finals. Previously, Liu Yang's continuous forming of seals to attack was merely a deception to make Ling Han focus on him and create the best opportunity for his frost-clouded leopard to attack. Indeed, he had succeeded. "Han Lin, you are indeed very powerful. However, you are too arrogant." Liu Yang smirked, then shot a punch directly at the pillar of ice. With ice freezing Ling Han's movements, his defenses were naturally at rock bottom. How could the former be able to block his full power blow then? Ga ga ga. But it was right at this moment that innumerable cracks actually appeared on the ice pillar, as if a spider web was unraveling. Ling Han was about to escape. What? Liu Yang was instantly so shocked that his hair was practically standing on ends. After suffering such a powerful move from the frost-clouded leopard, he actually was about to escape so quickly? Impossible! Impossible! One had to know that the frost-clouded leopard was in the 5th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, and this freezing attack was enough to make it lose practically all ability to attack. It could be imagined, then, how terrifyingly powerful this attack was. Though he thought this, Liu Yang's fist still shot forwards. This was his only chance to attain victory. Pang! His fist had yet to reach when the pillar of ice suddenly shattered. Innumerable shards of ice shot out, and the impact actually sent Liu Yang flying. With an ah! He spat out a mouthful of blood, and a great many wounds had appeared on his body, which had been either slashed, cut, or pierced open by the flying ice shards. Liu Yang was still the second strongest elite on the prodigy roll after all, so he managed to stop just in time, and was not thrown off the tournament stage with this single strike. He panted loudly. His eyes filled with disbelief. He had used so many powerful moves, and yet, they almost had no effect. Ling Han slowly stepped out and said calmly, "Your pet should be in the ranks of rulers, right? Otherwise, it could not possibly possess a talent mystical power." That was right. The previous freezing attack was not simply any random attack, but the unique freezing ability of the frost-clouded leopard, which was why this single attack caused the latter to practically lose all ability to battle after using it. However, its bloodline is not pure. That's why it could only use its mystical power once, then collapsed, Ling Han continued. True, if that had not been the case, how could a demonic beast in the ranks of rulers be willing to become the pet of a human being? Unless one had remarkably great luck and managed to take in a demonic beast that had the bloodline of a ruler when it was still very young. Even so, when the demonic beast's intelligence matured, it was still possible that it would turn against its master because a demonic beast in the ranks of rulers was too proud, and could absolutely not allow itself to serve under another. Just like the rulers amongst human beings. They could be defeated, but would definitively not allow themselves to be subservient to another. Lu Yang could not speak. Though he still had many powerful moves he had yet to use, but that previous attack was his strongest trump card, and since even this move was ineffective, what else could he do? He sighed disappointedly and said, "I admit defeat." At first, he was extremely confident and believed that there was only a gap of cultivation level between himself and Yang Junhao. If they were of the same cultivation level, and he and his frost-clouded leopard worked together, they could definitely defeat the latter. But Ling Han, who was merely in the first layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, managed to easily defeat him. This was a very harsh blow to his self-esteem. Seeing him leave in low spirits, Ling Han merely smiled faintly. If Lu Yang managed to get back onto his feet, there would definitely be a place for him among the most powerful characters in the future. However, if he was not able to recover from this blow and continued to be depressed, he might possibly create the record of being the first one who had been on the prodigy role yet was unable to break through to the flower blossom tier. But this was none of his business, it was merely a passing thought. Ling Han walked down from the tournament stage. He deliberately observed the battle of the masked man. Just like him, the latter's battle style was extremely simple, but every punch and every palm strike possessed just the right amount of power. If he could use merely 30% of his power to end the battle, he would definitely not use 35. This did not just show the precise control of the masked man, but also his absolute control over how the battle proceeded. That was how he knew how much power he had to use to achieve his desired results. This man was extremely terrifying. Ling Han felt a sense of familiarity from this person, but he had never seen this kind of battle style before. In terms of control of power, he could possibly be superior even to the Sword Emperor and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Such a monster actually appeared in the spiritual pedestal tier. In the fourth round, Ling Han's opponent was Yang Junhao. He had just fought with number 2 of the prodigy role, and now he was going to fight number 1. What a coincidence. The two of them walked up to the tournament stage. Yang Junhao smiled and said, "I was just complaining about the fact that I did not have enough fun at the prodigy tournament battles, and now, I have finally encountered a person that is worthy of making me fight." Ling Han laughed loudly and asked, "Didn't you have a lot of fun playing around with a 5-6-year-old little girl?" Yang Junhao's face immediately darkened. He was convinced that he was invincible in his age range, yet was actually thrashed so terribly by Yunyo. Thankfully, the latter had not used her teeth. Otherwise, it was very possible that he would suffer terribly. The loss that he had suffered at the Hunyo's hands was something that he considered to be a great humiliation. This was really touching on his sore spot, and he instantly became angered. Kume, Kume, Kume. Since you lack discipline, I'll give you another good thrashing." Ling Han hooked his finger at him. "Han Lin, you are so confident in yourself. When you are defeated later, will you cry?" Yang Junhao asked, smirking coldly. Ling Han smiled, and directly shot out. So fast. This thought merely flashed through Yang Junhao's head when he felt a pain in his lower abdomen, and his whole body was sent flying. With a pang, he fell onto the ground, his head completely blank. Hua, the whole area was in an uproar. The one and only number 1 of the prodigy role did not even manage to resist one attack when he was simply thrown off the tournament stage by his opponent? That was too humiliating, wasn't it? Lu Yang, at least, lasted a number of moves, and he managed to even freeze Ling Han. At that instant, it seemed like he had hopes of winning, but in Yang Junhao's case, Yang Junhao himself had not managed to react yet. He had too many powerful moves he had yet to use. Furthermore, there was no restriction on spiritual tools this time, and his battle prowess could still reach the level of pseudo-flower blossom tier, at least. But with a mere punch, he was thrown off the tournament stage. "I refuse to submit." His face twitched madly. This was too humiliating. The number 1 person on the prodigy role was actually sent flying with a single punch by his opponent. How was he supposed to continue holding his head high if this spread out? He wanted to get back on the tournament stage, but was coldly stopped by the referee. The latter even rolled his eyes at him, which almost made him explode in anger. In the 5th round, Ling Han encountered the strongest person of the previous prodigy role, Yu Kuan-Luan. After this battle, he would be able to enter into the finals, and his opponent would be the victor of the battle between the masked person Zhang San and Xiao Tianyi was the #1 person of the prodigy role before the last. In terms of power, he was superior to even Yu Kuan-Luan. After all, Xiao Tianyi had accumulated cultivation at the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier for an additional 2 or 3 years. Yu Kuan-Luan walked up onto the tournament stage, stood facing Ling Han, smiled, and said, I had originally thought that I would be facing Yang Junhao, and there would be a battle between the #1 person of the previous prodigy role and the #1 person of the current prodigy role. What a real pity. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, There's nothing to be done about it. I am too strong. Oh, and how strong are you? Yu Kuan-Luan asked smilingly. Much stronger than you. I'll just defeat you in 3 punches then, because the battle on the opposite side has already concluded. Ling Han said. What? Yu Kuan-Luan was shocked and looked at the tournament stage beside them. Indeed, Xiao Tianyi had been sent flying off the tournament stage. So fast. Yu Kuan-Luan's expression changed in shock. Though he did not fear Xiao Tianyi, there was absolutely no way he had the ability to defeat him so quickly. But the masked man, Zhang San, managed to achieve the feat. This meant that if the two of them were to fight, he would doubtlessly be defeated. There is no use to think so far ahead. It is impossible that you will fight him, Ling Han said, smiling. Yu Kuan-Luan took a deep breath, then actually smiled and said, Since you have such overwhelming confidence, then I shall allow you to have this opponent then. After saying so, he actually leaped off the tournament stage directly, forfeiting the match without even fighting. Chapter 446. Fierce Battle with the Masked Man. A very decisive man. Ling Han nodded in agreement. Even if Yu Kuan-Luan could defeat him, since the masked man was capable of easily defeating Xiao Tianyi, the former could also naturally defeat Yu Kuan-Luan easily as well. Thus, the latter simply chose to draw back wisely in the face of overwhelming odds to save some face. When news of this incident spread, it naturally had some effect on Yu Kuan-Luan's reputation. But that would still be better than being publicly defeated in front of all the spectators. What more when he could possibly suffer a crushing defeat? Ling Han turned his eyes towards the masked man, who also turned to look at him. There was a green-colored light flickering in the eyes of the latter that exuded a terrifying pressure. Even Ling Han, who had a sliver of the divine sense of the heaven tier, felt his heart tremble in fear. How could this be possible? Could this be an ultimate cultivator of the Shattering Void tier that had deliberately disguised himself to participate in this tournament? But if he really was in the Shattering Void tier, then he could just have simply grabbed the key, and what could anyone do? Not just in the North region, even if this happened in the Middle State, no one would dare to say anything. So strange. Neither Ling Han nor the masked man made any requests to rest, and chose to battle directly instead. Have I seen you before? Ling Han asked smilingly, beginning to probe for information. The masked man bared his teeth in a grin and said, I, on the other hand, recognize you, though you have changed your face. Ling Han was greatly shocked. Someone actually saw through his disguise. Come, make your move, and let me see how far your ability has improved, the masked man said. Ling Han's hands curled into fists. He did not dare to be the slightest bit careless. He was completely unable to see through this man. In addition, there was a bone-deep evilness about him which Ling Han despised beyond measure. Hold on. Enlightenment flashed through Ling Han's head and he asked, Yen? Hee, so you finally remember? The masked man asked, smiling. Yen Tian Zhao. No wonder this person gave him an indescribably evil feeling. Ling Han had only sensed such shocking evilness on this man before, as if he was the embodiment of evil. Ling Han had never thought that after leaving the Rain Country for almost a year, there would have been such gigantic improvement in his ability. At that time, though Yen Tian Zhao was slightly monstrous as well, he was still very, very far from the shocking extent he was now. Neither of them called out the other's real name. You keep my secret, and I'll keep yours. Come fight then, Ling Han declared, confidence high. He believed that in the same cultivation level, he could sweep away all who stood before him. As you wish. Yen Tian Zhao's figure shot forth, and charged to attack Ling Han. Bing, 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 bing. In an instant, the two fighters had exchanged a dozen blows. Ling Han was stunned. Yen Tian Zhao's strength was actually not inferior to his at all, And in terms of battle details, the former had achieved a shocking height, as if he was a born warrior who could completely battle based on pure instinct. There were obviously a few times that he had been caught in a dangerous spot, but Tian Zhao used his elbow to shove, waist to knock, and shoulder to push. It looked like he was not using any particular technique, but he could somehow dissolve the dangerous situation and instead cause quite considerable trouble to Ling Han. If it had not been for the fact that Ling Han had formed the body of iron sheet, he would have likely experienced great loss at his hands. However, the body of iron sheet was not perfect. After Tian Zhao discovered his shockingly strong defense, he switched from palm strikes to using his fingers to attack, purposely aiming for Ling Han's eyes. Every strike was sharp and severe, forcing Ling Han into a very difficult position. When fighting with others, Ling Han could always manage to get the upper hand in the overall battle. The divine sense of the heaven tier allowed him to predict the attacks his opponent would make so that he could prepare to parry in advance. In other words, the moment his opponent made a move, victory was already in his grasp. But it was completely the other way round when fighting with Tian Zhao. He could predict every move that Ling Han made. As a result, though Ling Han had shockingly powerful battle prowess, it was of no use, and he was gradually being suppressed by his opponent. Ling Han suddenly recalled that Tian Zhao's eyes once emitted a pressure that caused even him to feel fear and dread. Could it be that Tian Zhao, like him, had also been taken over by an elite cultivator? In addition, the former was even stronger than him, and could very possibly be an ultimate elite of the Shattering Void tier. Only in that situation would Tian Zhao's divine sense be able to suppress his own, and completely suppress him in battle prowess as well. Interesting. Very interesting. Not only was Ling Han not the slightest bit scared, a burning battle spirit arose in him instead. In the spiritual pedestal tier, there was practically no one able to fight him on equal grounds, and now that a great foe had suddenly appeared, his blood was boiling in excitement. Let's have a good fight. He laughed loudly, using his war elephant fist. 7 dragon heads appeared, and surged towards Tian Zhao. Tian Zhao could not help but be slightly surprised, and words slipped out of his mouth. The technique of the Earth Dragon Palace. Earth Dragon Palace. A thought streaked through Ling Han's head. The war elephant fist originated from Na Lan Tu, and Na Lan Tu came from the Earth Dragon sect. Ever since the Azura Demon Emperor recognized the mysterious 3000 technique as a martial arts technique from the Heaven Sword Palace, Ling Han had made a note. Perhaps those few great sects in the Middle State all had relations to the realm of gods. Xueqi from the Blue Thunder sect even had clansmen in the realm of gods. Thus, once Tian Zhao said, Earth Dragon Palace, he definitely did not believe that the former had had a slip of the tongue, and wrongly called the Earth Dragon sect as Earth Dragon Palace. Hiss, could this guy also have some kind of relation to the realm of gods? Tian Zhao was sealed by another when he was 5 years old, and since then, he had always been in a state of coma. Only after he received an alchemical pill from Ling Han had he awoken. After that, no more than a few days, and he had already soared up to the spiritual ocean tier, and furthermore, displayed a very strange power. If Tian Zhao had always been possessed by a god, then everything could be explained. A pressure that could cause his heart to tremble in fear, as well as that extremely meticulous battle ability. Who exactly are you? Ling Han asked somberly. Oh, I too would like to ask, who are you? Tian Zhao smiled as he continued to deliver a barrage of attacks with his fists. He obviously did not have a single flash of fist chi, but the punches he delivered were extremely powerful and oppressive, and it seemed as if Ling Han delivered himself up to be punched to show the absolute control that his opponent had over the battle. Indeed. Ling Han nodded internally. The other had definitely been taken over by an elite cultivator, who could very possibly be a god. At that time, someone must have seen something odd about him, but had only sealed Tian Zhao away, causing him to go into deep slumber. But now that he had been unsealed, this soul could finally take complete control over this body and display a terrifying battle prowess. You've come from the realm of gods, right? Ling Han continued to exchange blows with the other, whilst asking in a lowered voice. This was too universally shocking, and he did not want to be overheard by anyone else. Realm of gods? Tian Zhao laughed loudly, and similarly lowering his voice he said, Frog at the bottom of a well, even close to the moment of your death, you remain ignorant. How very amusing. What do you mean? Ling Han questioned. Perhaps a few dozen years, or perhaps over 100 years later, you will know. Zhao said coldly. But now lose. I am determined to win the treasure in the 12 heaven mystery realms. Ha ha. Ling Han laughed coldly as well. If that is so, then I can't allow you to have your way even more. You can't stop me. Zhao declared arrogantly. Now, I can display close to 100% of my battle prowess. How could you possibly be able to oppose me? Don't forget, I am only in the first layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. Ling Han said with a smile. This was his greatest advantage. Zhao could not help his eyes turning cold. Though he had completely taken control of this body and could display his full battle prowess in it, he, too, was restricted by the power of this body, and his battle prowess was not without its limits. Ling Han was already so powerful now, so if he reached the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, his battle prowess would definitely rise a few more levels and he would be even more difficult to stand against at that time. Then I can't allow you to live even more. A green pentagram lit up in Zhao's eyes and he raised his hands. Instantly, multiple green silken strands spread out. Pang! It was precisely at this moment that a man was seen hurriedly rushing into the great arena, and exclaimed in shock, "My lord clan head, the key has been stolen by a weirdo that hid in a coffin." Chapter 447. The key was snatched. Updated by Novelful. Xueqi. When they heard this word, both Ling Han and Zhao stopped fighting simultaneously. They subconsciously thought that this was referring to the secret key that could open up the Sagittarius Palace Hall. Indeed, the clan head of the Zhang clan immediately stood up wearing an expression of shock and rage as he shouted, "How could that be possible? The key has been hidden so well, so how could someone have found it?" In reply to clan head, the man answered with fear and trepidation. That man used some kind of unknown secret technique to take control of Fourth Elder, and had him personally take out the key which he handed over to that man. Then the latter escaped in a coffin. Ronghuan Xuan. Ling Han was immediately certain that it was him. Though there were possibly other disciples of the Thousand Corpse sect in Extreme Yang City, the only man who would dare to so publicly appear as a disciple of the Thousand Corpse sect could only be Ronghuan Xian. With the 3 Lives Corpse casket, he could be as willful as he liked. Without a word, Ling Han and Zhao both simply turned and left. With a few leaps, they had reached the highest point in the great arena. Their eyes swept over the surrounding area, and soon saw where the commotion was. They then respectively used their motion techniques and moved to pursue. Since the key has been snatched, what point was there to continue participating in any marriage tournament? Xiao, who too, used her extreme speed and joined the pursuit. She shot a look at Zhao, opened her mouth slightly and bared her snow-white teeth, seeming to be filled with battle spirit. A hint of dread actually appeared in Zhao's eyes, and he could not help but maintain a certain distance from Zhao. The Azura Demon Emperor could possess Ronghuan Xian, and Zhao was also suspected to be taken over by a godlike being, so if Zhao too had a terrifying godly spirit in her, it didn't seem strange anymore. However, Ling Han was still extremely doubtful. Was there such a god that was violent yet whose favorite activity was to eat and also play cute? The origin of the little girl's oddity was in her spirit base, and seemed to be completely different from Ronghuan Xian and Zhao. What a headache. There were really too many monsters in this lifetime. Ling Han ignored it for the moment. The most important thing now was to cut Ronghuan Xian off and snatch back the key. Thankfully, though the defenses of the 3 Lives Corpse casket were extremely impressive, it was not too overwhelmingly quick. At least, the gap between Ling Han and Zhao and the casket was slowly decreasing. There was no need to mention Zhao with her terrifying speed. However, she did not go all out, and instead chose to stay by Ling Han's side. There was no shortage of the Flower Blossom tier elites in Extreme Yang City, and though Ling Han had not seen any before, he believed that there were also ultimate elite cultivators of the spiritual infant tier as well. Ronghuan Xian dared to so boldly snatch away the key. How could they so calmly allow him to escape? But at least until this moment, no Flower Blossom tier cultivator had made a move yet. It was understandable. If they snatched back the key in Extreme Yang City, there was a high chance they could ultimately be pressured into returning the key to the Zhang clan. However, once it had left the city, that would consider to be in the wilderness. And if one obtained something in the wilderness, that naturally belonged to him, and there was no such thing as a lost item. This was a hidden rule. Thus, everyone was waiting. They were all waiting for Ronghuan to leave the city, and at that time, it would definitely tempt a large number of elite cultivators into acting. Flower blossom tier, or even spiritual infant tier cultivators making a move would not be strange. The 3 Lives corpse casket cleared the way, and no one could stop it in its path. It just took about 10 over minutes, and Ronghuan exited the city. Instantly, multiple figures appeared, no longer enduring silently. Be careful, this casket is a treasure of the 1,000 Corpse sect and possesses extraordinary power, someone reminded. He was a flower blossom tier cultivator that had once appeared in the Dark Devil Forest and personally witnessed how terrifying the 3 Lives corpse casket could be. A considerable number of people nodded, but even more looked disdainful. Even if it was a level 10 spirit tool, how much power it could display would still depend on who the user was. Since you all are so cowardly, then I shall humbly receive this key. One of them made a move and delivered a palm strike in the direction of the 3 Lives corpse casket. Idiot! A large number of people thought. Pa! A palm struck onto the 3 Lives corpse casket, and instantly, multiple patterns lit up on the lid of the casket that transformed into a floating army of skulls and shot out in the form of a spear at the man. The man was greatly shocked, and hurriedly spread out his martial intent to form a layer of defense over his entire body. However, the spear simply pierced directly through his defenses. Pooh! It pierced through his head, and blood dripped from the tip of the spear. His luck was not as good as that flower blossom tier cultivator from the Dark Devil Forest. He was killed with a direct pierce through the head. The army of skulls disappeared automatically, and when the body of the flower blossom tier cultivator lost its support, it instantly fell down from the skies and onto the ground, causing the layer of dirt on the ground to be disturbed. Ha 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 ha, you actually gifted me with the body of a flower blossom tier cultivator as material for my corpse soldier, thanks. Ronghuan's voice was heard from within the casket. The lid of the casket opened. An arm stretched out and quickly dragged the body of the flower blossom tier cultivator inside. Pung! The lid of the coffin quickly closed back up again. When they saw this scene, everyone was struck speechless. This casket was defying logic, so what could they do now? Looks like flower blossom tier cultivators were of no use, so the only other option was to have spiritual infant tier cultivators make a move. A powerful cultivator whose whole body was enshrouded in a purple-colored divine light appeared. An impressive aura emanated from him, and even spiritual pedestal tier cultivators were forced to their knees in front of him, without the slightest ability to resist. An elite cultivator of the spiritual infant tier. However, Ling, Hu Niu and Yen Tian Zhao were no ordinary people, and were not the slightest bit afraid that they would be oppressed by this terrifying aura. Furthermore, Ronghuan, being protected by the 3 Lives corpse casket, was also unafraid. Moreover, this kind of aura was not invincible. As long as one was a ruler that had managed to form 7 flashes of qi, he would be qualified to resist, and could decrease the effects this kind of aura had. It's Violet Point Elder. When they saw this powerful cultivator appear, all those flower blossom tier cultivators gasped in surprise. Though they were all aware that this would draw the attention of spiritual infant tier cultivators, when such an ultimate elite cultivator appeared, it still caused much commotion. Indeed, even spiritual infant tier elite cultivators would be moved by the inheritance inside the 12 heaven mystery realms. Though Violet Point Elder might not be qualified to enter into the mystery realm, he had a great many disciples and grand disciples. There definitely had to be 1 or 2 talented ones among them, and as long as they obtained the inheritance, wouldn't that be equivalent to the Violet Point Elder obtaining it as well? The Violet Point Elder's figure descended, and began to press a palm onto the 3 Lives corpse casket. Ha ha ha, stupid old man. Are you here to seek death as well? Ronghuan laughed loudly, appearing very arrogant and conceited. This caused everyone much displeasure. He was merely a minor character in the spiritual pedestal tier, and just because he had a level 10 spirit tool, he dared to undermine them. This was also because there was a shortage of ultimate elite cultivators in the North region. Otherwise, if he dared to try the same thing in the Middle State, even with such a turtle shell-like defense, the only conclusion would be him being dragged out and killed. The Violet Point Elder pressed a palm onto the casket, and instantly, the 3 Lives corpse casket reacted. Another skull soldier appeared and slashed towards him. Bang! 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 The both of them instantly broke out into a fierce battle. The Violet Point Elder was not at a disadvantage, but also did not manage to destroy the Skull Soldier, and a stalemate instantly ensued. But the Skull Soldier was only an attack formed by the 3 Lives Corpse Casket. Even if it was destroyed, the 3 Lives Corpse Casket needed only to form a second one. Would the Violet Point Elder be able to withstand such a rate of depletion of energy? Violet Elder, old man, I'll give you a hand. Another spiritual infant tier cultivator appeared, and he simply slashed out directly with his sword at the casket. Hong! A slash of sword chi took the form of a divine sword that was as long as 1,000 feet, which ruthlessly sliced forth. Pang! The divine sword sliced down on the casket, and instantly invoked multiple ripples of light and shadow. Woo! Rong Huanxian called out in pain. Though he was not directly attacked, the vibration from the impact of the strike still caused him much pain. Chapter 448. Battle Royale. Dark Angel _. Sure enough, even if a level 10 spirit tool like the 3 Lives Corpse Casket was triggered, it could only display the battle prowess at the level of the spiritual infant tier. However, in a place like the North region, the spiritual infant tier was already considered the strongest level. A Rong Huanxian that possessed the 3 Lives Corpse Casket was still the cause of much headache. He only needed to continue hiding in the 3 Lives Corpse Casket and not come out, and really, there might be no one capable of doing anything to him. Wang! However, after receiving the strike of this divine sword, the patterns on the 3 Lives Corpse Casket flickered and immediately formed another Skull Soldier that charged towards the spiritual infant tier cultivator that had delivered the sword strike. This spiritual infant tier cultivator had absolutely no interest in being entangled by the 3 Lives Corpse Casket, and his figure immediately flickered, choosing not to have a face-to-face confrontation with the Skull Soldier. He waved his sword once more, and delivered another strike at the 3 Lives Corpse Casket. Ah! Rong Huanxian once again shouted in pain. The casket allowed him to avoid any direct attacks, but the impact caused by spiritual infant tier level attacks still caused him a lot of suffering. Another Skull Soldier appeared and charged towards that spiritual infant tier cultivator. Everyone could not help but pale. One attack would cause the appearance of a Skull Soldier. Who could hold up to that? Even the strongest spiritual infant tier cultivator would not be able to stand against the combined forces of so many Skull Soldiers. The second spiritual infant tier cultivator once again dodged, and struck in another attack with his divine sword. This naturally led to the appearance of the fourth Skull Soldier. Could there be no limit to the number of Skull Soldiers that this casket could summon? As Ling Han watched on, he thought that there was definitely a limit. But the 3 Lives Corpse Casket was a level 10 spirit tool. A spiritual infant tier cultivator wanted to force it to its limit? That was impossible. They were both level 10 spirit tools, but the 3 Lives Corpse Casket was really very powerful, far surpassing the Demon Birth Sword. It really proves itself to be the imitation of the 3 Lives Corpse Casket of the underworld. Even I feel slightly covetous of it. Tian Zhao murmured to himself. His voice was very low, but Ling Han still managed to hear him. After the second spiritual infant tier cultivator delivered a series of 7 strikes at the 3 Lives Corpse Casket, finally, he was no longer capable of attacking again, because there were already 7 Skull Soldiers ganging up on him, causing him to no longer have the excess energy to attack. Ha 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 ha, you are only a mere spiritual infant tier cultivator, and you want to stand against me? Rong Huanxian's arrogant laughter sounded very unpleasant to hear. However, the 3 Lives Corpse Casket was indeed very powerful, and they had no choice but to concede that. Ling Han said internally to Small Tower, just take a look, he just has a level 10 spirit tool and is already so awesome, whereas I have to behave myself, tucking my tail between my legs. Why is there such a huge disparity? Small Tower replied calmly, if you want to, I too can display my full power. You can destroy whomever you like as well. Anyways, you're the master, so I obey you. Fuck. Ling Han was only expressing some of his laments. How could he not know revealing the Black Tower would tempt out those really powerful characters? However, Small Tower was really too much of a ruffian, whereas he, on the other hand, almost had his nose bent out of irritation. Why did he feel that this tool spirit was quite a hooligan in essence? There were in total 3 spiritual infant tier cultivators present, and they all made their move respectively, but it only caused the appearance of even more Skull Soldiers that suppressed them completely. What nonsense, spiritual infant tier cultivators. Wait until I obtain the inheritance in the 12 heaven mystery realms. Then I will return and refine you all into corpse soldiers. Ha 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 ha. Xuan'er laughed uproariously. Who would be able to play around with spiritual infant tier cultivators in the palm of his hand whilst he himself was only in the spiritual pedestal tier? Only he. All those cultivators of the flower blossom tier and the spiritual infant tier roared in rage. But what could they do? They had no way to break through the defenses of the 3 lives corpse casket. Yet Ling nodded internally. In the case of passive defenses, one needed only to be in the deity transformation tier and would still be able to kill Xuan'er with the impact of one's attacks, even with the 3 lives corpse casket in the way. Of course, that was based on the premise that Xuan'er's cultivation was not in the deity transformation tier yet. This was enough proof of the might of the 3 lives corpse casket. It was merely in a state of passive defense, yet one would still need an attack at the level of deity transformation tier to kill the person hiding within it. Xuan'er continued to propel the 3 lives corpse casket in flight. Some flower blossom tier cultivators were still in pursuit, unwilling to give up the chase, whereas others had already turned around and left. There was nothing they could do to this guy if he continued to hide inside the casket. 10 days later, all the powerful cultivators left helplessly. There was no meaning to continue being obsessed over the casket, because it was obvious that Xuan'er had a spatial ring and did not need to worry that he would starve to death. The only people remaining in pursuit were Ling, Xuan'er, and Tian Zhao. Ling and Xuan'er chased together, whereas Tian Zhao was on his own. The 3 of them hid themselves as they continued the pursuit. However, when those flower blossom tier and spiritual infant tier cultivators all left, Tian Zhao shot out, and with a great leap, arrived in front of the 3 lives corpse casket. Hand out the key and I shall spare you, Tian Zhao commanded calmly. You are only in the spiritual pedestal tier. How boldly you speak. Xuan'er came out of the casket and shot a cold smirk at Tian Zhao. When I moved unhindered in this world, who knows where your ancestor was, and you actually dare behave insolently in front of me. Tian Zhao moved directly, aiming to grab Xuan'er. Ling did not move. He was afraid that Xuan'er would escape back into the 3 lives corpse casket. In that case, that would be like a tiger trying to bite through a turtle's shell, with no idea where to bite. On the other hand, it would be much easier to snatch the key from Tian Zhao's grasp. What a joke! Xuan'er was naturally fearless and drew out a long saber as he delivered a strike. Though the personal battle prowess of disciples of the Thousand Corpse sect were usually not very strong, there were still exceptions to the rule. For example, Xuan'er had obtained the inheritance of the sect leader, and though he had not managed to get the other level 10 spirit tool, the demonic noise saber, he managed to get a saber technique which could be used together with the demonic noise saber. The grade of this saber technique was not too low, and it could be used as long as one had cultivated corpse chi. How strong this saber technique was would depend on one's achievements in terms of corpse chi cultivation. Thus, Xuan'er still had some level of ability in saber techniques, and formed 5 flashes of saber chi that slashed at Tian Zhao with a single strike of his saber. Tian Zhao neither dodged nor ducked. He stretched open his right hand, and martial intent surged. Multiple green-colored silken threads spread out, and like a net, moved to encircle Xuan'er. Rip apart! Xuan'er declared sharply. His saber chi slashed forth, but this green-colored net was completely unscathed. What? He could not help but be stunned. How could the quality of this person's chi be so far above his own? Ignorant brat! Tian Zhao's large net had already opened up and surrounded Xuan'er completely. Damn it! Xuan'er had not thought that there would be such a huge gap between himself and this man. He hurriedly retreated, intending to duck back into hiding inside the 3 lives corpse casket. I have already moved. Do you still think you can escape? Tian Zhao asked in disdain. Both ends of the green net had already joined together and wrapped around Xuan'er. Xuan'er emitted a roar of rage. Because he had underestimated his foe, he had fallen into such passive circumstances. He expelled a sharp whistle from his mouth. Pung! A figure actually appeared out of the 3 lives corpse casket and charged to attack Tian Zhao. This was a corpse soldier, and there was a shocking hole in its forehead. It was precisely that spiritual infant tear cultivator that had been killed by the 3 Lives corpse casket 10 days ago. Now, it had already been refined into a corpse soldier. However, because there had not been enough time, it had not been refined completely, and only had the battle prowess of a high-level spiritual pedestal tier cultivator. But there was completely no issue for it to detain Tian Zhao, and not allow him a chance to make a move on Ronghuan Xian. Ling Han smiled. It was time for him to make a move. He jumped out and immediately charged out. Without hesitation, he drew the demon birth sword and struck at both Ronghuan Xian and Tian Zhao. Damn it! Ronghuan Xian and Tian Zhao both humphed, but the timing of this strike was too well calculated. It had taken advantage of this particular instant when the two of them were embroiled in a fierce battle, and their defenses were at their weakest. Updated by Novelful. Kam Hong, right at this moment, the 3 Lives corpse casket slid over and stood in between Ling Han and Ronghuan Xian. Chapter 449. The Origins of Tian Zhao. Pang! The sword flash struck, all of it delivered onto the 3 Lives corpse casket. This was a level 10 spirit tool, and very easily managed to block all the damage from Ling Han's strike. Thankfully, the demon birth sword was also a level 10 spirit tool. As a result, it did not evoke a counterattack from the 3 Lives corpse casket. But the 3 Lives corpse casket was already making a move to cover Ronghuan Xian. As long as Ronghuan Xian hid back inside, then he would once again be invincible. Ling Han, you can't do anything to me. Ronghuan Xian sneered. Since he had seen Hu Niu, how could he not be certain of Ling Han's identity? Hold on. Where was that little girl? He had just seen her just now. Why was there no sign of her now? Ah! He suddenly screamed. He turned to take a look, and Hu Niu's little head had actually appeared in the green net. Furthermore, the corner of her mouth was still bloody. She had actually bitten off 2 of his fingers, and one of them was wearing his spatial ring. No! He immediately shouted loudly. The spatial ring was not worth much, but the problem was that it contained all his possessions, which included the key that he had snatched from the Zhang clan. Hee. Hu Niu bared her mouth in a grin. She and Ling Han had coordinated very well. One of them would attack head-on to attract attention, whereas the other would deliver a sneak attack from the side. She forcefully bit through the green net with her bite that had the power of 20 stars of flower blossom tear behind it, and while she was at it, bit off 2 of Ronghuan Xian's fingers as well. She retreated quickly. Pang! The 3 Lives corpse casket closed up, and swallowed Ronghuan Xian inside. Kill them! Kill all of them! Ronghuan Xian's muffled voice was heard from inside. Losing 2 fingers was no issue. As long as his heart was unscathed, corpse qi could regrow all organs and limbs, but the spatial ring had to be snatched back. Immediately, the corpse soldier turned its focus to Ling Han. Tian Zhao too, with a wave of his right hand, he took back his green net. His eyes turned to Ling Han, filled with frost, and said coldly, "Hand over the key and I can spare your life." Ling Han casually erased the divine sense that Ronghuan Xian had left on the spatial ring. With a sweep of his own divine sense, sure enough, he found that there was a silver key inside. It was made of some kind of unknown material, and was as thick as a child's arm. He smiled faintly, and simply stored the spatial ring into the black tower. Then, he quickly dodged in a flash, not intending to come into a straight confrontation with the corpse soldier. That was absolutely meaningless. Oh, in the first place, the victor in the battle between you and I has not been decided, and I was precisely planning to have a good, fun battle. If you force me to give it my all, the only path for you is death. Tian Zhao declared coldly. With a wave of his right hand, a flash of green light shot out, which actually transformed into a wing. The wing was exceedingly thin, and like an exceptional heavenly blade, slashed towards Ling Han. Ling Han drew his sword. Ding! When the long sword clashed onto the wing, fierce sparks of fire actually flickered. Upon a closer look, those weren't ordinary sparks, but rather a multitude of pattern designs. What a terrifying Tian Zhao! The martial intent that he delivered was actually on par with a level 10 spirit tool. But it was right at this moment that the corpse soldier waved a claw at Tian Zhao. The command it had received was to kill everyone, and that naturally included Tian Zhao. At first, Tian Zhao was further away from it, so it naturally attacked Ling Han, who was closer first. However, now that Tian Zhao had all of a sudden rushed so close to it, it naturally did not mind attacking him as well. Fuck! Tian Zhao cursed. No matter how glorious his last life had been, he now only had the cultivation level of the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. There was absolutely no way he could ignore a corpse soldier with flower blossom tier cultivation level, even if it had not been completely refined. He once again shot another attack, but this one was headed towards the corpse soldier. Ling Han rushed forwards, and with a wave of the demon birth sword, 10 flashes of sword chi appeared. The 4-season sword technique was already in use, the various concepts moving in a wave like the passage of time. This time, it was now he and the corpse soldier combining forces against Tian Zhao. Tian Zhao was suspected to have been taken over by the spirit of a god. His battle prowess was astonishingly and terrifyingly powerful, and he easily managed to disperse the combined attacks of Ling Han and the corpse soldier. However, the moment Ling Han came near, the corpse soldier turned the focus of its attacks onto Ling Han, making the situation extremely chaotic. The 3 sides were embroiled in a chaotic battle, and Ling Han, as the person who had obtained the key, naturally became the priority target of attack, but the corpse soldier was a standard, double-faced character. If it was able to attack Ling Han, then it would, but if Ling Han was further away from it, it wouldn't just stand idly, either. It would accordingly head to attack Tian Zhao, making Tian Zhao feel very gloomy. This ally was really too unreliable. As Xuan'er watched from the side, she kept clapping her hands in excitement. She was absolutely confident in Ling Han. After a period of time to accumulate power, Ling Han struck, and the mysterious 3000 technique was out in full glory. 1,000 sword flashes. The 4-season sword technique was only a black-grade high-level martial arts technique, but the spiritual pedestal tier could already use earth-grade martial arts techniques, and the mysterious 3000 was a martial arts technique which had a grade surpassing heaven grade. Its power only limited by the comprehension that the wielder had about sword arts. In the instant that Ling Han leaped from black grade all the way to surpassing heaven grade, the power of his sword attack naturally soared like crazy. Shiu, shiu, shiu. The 1,000 sword flashes were tightly condensed together, and every single sword flash was equivalent to Ling Han's full power attack. And how shockingly powerful was that? Furthermore, this was an attack that had been delivered with a level 10 spirit tool. Tian Zhao immediately gave a muffled humph, and stretching out both arms, made multiple green threads spread out. This time, they did not form a net, but were far more tightly woven than a net. They actually formed 2 wings that were comprised of patterned designs that shielded him within. The corpse soldier, meanwhile, continued to rush forwards dumbly, and also suffered a major part of the might of the sword flashes. Pang! The sword flashes shattered, which created a large explosion, making for a very terrifying display. When the sword flashes had completely disappeared, the corpse soldier was visibly riddled with holes. Its left arm had been sliced off as well. However, it continued to pounce at Ling Han, possessing absolutely no fear of death. Meanwhile, Tian Zhao was far better off. The wings of light that had protected him had only lost a few feathers, whereas he was completely unscathed. This naturally was also because the majority of the attack had been sustained by the corpse soldier. He had to admit, in terms of the toughness of physique, the corpse soldier was absolutely on par with precious metal, and could compare to the body of iron sheet. Furthermore, this was also because this corpse soldier had not been refined completely, and could only be considered as slightly above the level of a level 2 silver-armored corpse soldier, and had yet to reach the stage of level 3. Otherwise, even mysterious 3000 would not be able to inflict any damage to it. After all, this was a technique meant to attack a whole group, whereas 10,000 techniques was the real devastating attack. This is a sword technique from the Heaven's Sword Palace. Tian Zhao exclaimed in surprise, his brow slightly frowning. That's not right. There is a Heaven's Sword sect here. Could it be that you are a disciple of that place? No, you came from the Rain Country, so there should be no relation between you and the Heaven's Sword sect. Could it be that you are the reincarnation of some powerful character from the Heaven's Sword Palace? His first words were actually spoken to himself, but his last few words were a question directed at Ling Han. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, I don't have any relation with the Heaven's Sword Palace. On the other hand, you, who know of the existence of the Heaven's Sword Palace, I assume that you are someone from the realm of gods then? Realm of gods? Yan Tianzhao suddenly laughed loudly after a moment of being stunned. With an expression filled with disdain, he said, "Ignorant fool of the lower realm, you are ignorant beyond compare. To tell you the truth, I am indeed Yan Tianzhao. However, when I was young, I accidentally triggered a device which contained the memories of a god, and was thus slightly affected." Ling Han finally understood. Memories were something that should not be trifled with carelessly. Why was he unwilling to use the art of searching another's soul? That was because after he touched the memories of another, they would merge with his own memories. And once there was a large amount of such memories, he would not be able to differentiate which memories were his own, and which belonged to another. It would definitely affect him, and there might even be a great, dramatic change in his character. At that time, Yan Tianzhao was only 5 years old, and his personal characteristic had yet to be fully formed. How could he then withstand a whole lifetime of memories of a god? As a result, his character naturally changed dramatically. He was practically the carbon copy of that god, and had become incredibly evil. That was why he had been sealed away. Chapter 450. The dust has settled. Fuck! From within the Three Lives corpse casket, Rong Huanxian could be heard cursing. He was really an unlucky one. First, he was possessed by a Jura demon emperor, someone on the par of gods, and now, he encountered a monster that possessed the memories of a god. Moreover, it was very possible that Ling Han had some kind of relation with the ancient era. However, Yan Tianzhao did not even bother to give him any attention. In his eyes, Rong Huanxian was naturally the most minor character out of a whole batch of minor characters, and was absolutely unworthy of his notice. He looked at Ling Han seriously and said, "Is my sincerity enough? Ling Han, how about this? I don't need you to hand the key over to me, but I want to enter the Sagittarius Palace Hall with you and take a certain item from inside." When he saw Ling Han frown, he immediately waved his hand and said, "Don't worry, this item is absolutely useless to you." He paused a moment, then continued, "I can also get rid of the brat inside the casket for you. Others may not be able to do anything to the Three Lives corpse casket, but it has no effect on me. I can drag him out of it." Fuck! Rong Huanxian cursed again. If it was anyone else saying that, he would naturally scoff in disdain. However, Yan Tianzhao possessed the memories of a god, and could be considered as the reincarnation of a god, so who knew? He might possibly have a way to deal with the Three Lives corpse casket. Yet Ling Han grinned and answered, "No way!" Why? Yan Tianzhao was practically about to go crazy. He had already made enough concessions, yet Ling Han had still rejected his offer. Ling Han said, "As for the brat inside the casket, I am indeed unable to kill him now, but it won't take me too many years to be able to drag him out and kill him. It's a good thing to let him live as a reminder to myself. As for that key, it is obviously mine, so why do I need to hand it over to you? Furthermore, even a god would place so much importance on it. Qu'est-ce. That is even more the reason that I can't miss out on it." You! Yan Tianzhao was greatly enraged, and with a sudden leap, charged to attack Ling Han. Since negotiations had failed, the only option left now was to settle things with one's fists. Then you'll just have to see the terrifying battle prowess of our peacock race. Yan Tianzhao humphed frostily. As he waved both arms in attack, wings actually formed, but these wings were 100 feet long and covered with closely woven patterns that shone with glorious light and looked to be extremely terrifying in might. Ling Han used the mysterious 3,000 sword technique. He did not need to spend any time to accumulate power. It was enough for him to deliver 100+ sword flashes with every strike to shatter all the wings that Yan Tianzhao was shooting at him. The whole area was filled with shattered feathers that immediately transformed into a multitude of patterned designs which then quickly darkened and disappeared. Kill! 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 Yan Tianzhao's expression became evil beyond compare, and as his figure turned swiftly, it was as if he had really become a gigantic peacock. His wings fluttering violently, and murderous intent as far as the eye could see. Ling Han was neither shocked nor afraid. If he used the mysterious 3,000 sword technique, 100 sword flashes would be tossed out, and it was enough for him to stand on equal footing with Yan Tianzhao. Damn it! I am, after all, no longer in the body of a peacock, and am unable to display the might of the Bright King's secret technique to its fullest. Yan Tianzhao roared in rage, But the madness in his eyes did not decrease in the slightest and rather seemed to be aroused even further. "Give me my key." Hong, green flames actually erupted from his whole body, and actually warped the space. Ling Han immediately felt an instant of dizziness. "Poison," he thought, quickly drawing out a petal of the golden flower of the stone and swallowed it. Then he turned to look at Hu Niu. Thankfully, the little girl was some distance away, and so had not been surrounded by the flames. However, after he swallowed a petal of the golden flower of the stone, Ling Han felt that the dizziness that he was feeling was under control, but still did not feel any better. It was obvious that even the golden flower of the stone was unable to cleanse the poison of these flames, and could only provide temporary relief. Hiss, what kind of poison could this be, that even the golden flower of the stone, something that was claimed to be able to cleanse 10,000 poisons, could do nothing against it? Ling Han's battle spirit did not decrease but rather soared. Gripping the demon birth sword, he exclaimed, "Yen Tian Zhao, receive a strike from me." Hong, the thunder battle armor was activated and transformed into a barrier that isolated him from the flames. At this moment, the corpse soldier was already rendered mostly useless. It was first heavily damaged by Ling Han's mysterious 3000 sword technique, followed by Yen Tian Zhao's green flames, so its threat level could now be completely ignored. Thus, Ling Han needed only direct all his focus on Yen Tian Zhao. With a flick of his sword, Ling Han once again used the mysterious 3000 sword technique. Instantly, 1,000 sword flashes appeared in a wave that hid the sky and covered the earth. Yen Tian Zhao hurriedly stretched open his green wings and shielded himself within. When the sword flashes crashed into them, light from the multiple pattern designs flew everywhere, forcing him into a continuous retreat. When the sword flashes gradually disappeared, the wings that he had used to protect himself were also damaged. When the sword flashes decreased to about 200, the green wings were also completely shattered. Pu. The sword flashes wreaked havoc, and instantly, blood sprayed like crazy. Ling Han was secretly shocked. He really could not underestimate this guy. If it wasn't for the fact that he had increased his original 7 flashes of sword chi to 9 flashes, even the mysterious 3000 sword technique would not be able to penetrate Yen Tian Zhao's defenses. As Yen Tian Zhao roared in rage, he continued to throw up blood. This time, he had suffered quite a serious injury. Yet it was exactly this moment that Pang, the 3 lives corpse casket opened, and Rong Huanxian charged out with a direct slash in Yen Tian Zhao's direction. This was the moment that Yen Tian Zhao was at his weakest, and how could he have thought that Rong Huanxian would actually make a move against him? Thus he was instantly hit. Pooh, green-colored blood sprayed everywhere. He had actually been sliced in 2 halves at the waist. "You actually attacked me?" Yen Tian Zhao wore an expression of absolute disbelief. "Nonsense. You yourself said that you can drag me out of the 3 lives corpse casket. Whom else am I going to kill if not you?" Rong Huanxian smirked coldly. In comparison, he could still protect himself with Ling Han, and even if he did not manage to get the treasure inside the 12 heaven mystery realms, it was no great loss to him. It wasn't his in the first place, so naturally he did not feel any bitter anguish about it. Yen Tian Zhao felt very depressed. He had never imagined that someone that could only be considered a mere ant in his eyes would actually cause him such severe injury. But how could he die as easily as this? The upper half and lower half of his body actually moved on their own. One half broke out into a run with 2 legs, whereas the other pushed down onto the ground with both hands. Then with a leap, his upper half landed on top of his lower half, as if they could be attached back. "When the mystery realms open, I will definitely stop you, and you," he said to Ling Han first, then pointing at the 3 lives corpse casket. "The next time we meet, I will definitely turn you into a corpse." After saying such, he broke out into a run and fled. Hong 2 green-colored wings of light actually sprouted from his back, and as he stretched them out, he instantly shot into the skies and fled. He didn't die even from that. Ling Han stood with the help of his sword. Yen Tian Zhao could absolutely be considered as the reincarnation of the spirit of an ancient god, and knew a shockingly large number of secret techniques. He didn't die even from being cut in half, so the next time they met, would he have to crush his heart, or perhaps his head? "Ling Han, don't be too pleased with yourself. I will get myself a gold-armored corpse, and will definitely take your life next time." Rong Huanxian also threw out a line that fitted the situation, and was obviously intending to flee. I know. Go on," Ling Han said impatiently. You. Ronghuan Xian humphed. He was extremely displeased with Ling Han's attitude, as if he was some minor character of negligible importance. He swore to himself that he would definitely make Ling Han regret this. Hong, the 3 lives corpse casket slid away, and Ronghuan Xian left inside it. Ling Han, meanwhile, was in deep thought. For Yen Tian Zhao's situation. Was he the reincarnation of a god from his last life, or was he still himself? In his case, what category did he belong to then? Was he, too, in the situation that the memories of his last life had been transferred into this body? This caused him to feel at a bit of a loss. Ling Han. Hunyou leaped over and tugged on Ling Han's hand. This made Ling Han instantly break out into a smile, and chased away the confusion in his heart. He was who he was. He was neither the alchemy emperor he had been in his last life, nor was he the useless young man of this lifetime. Rather, he was an existence formed from the merging of these two, possessing both their merits and their shortcomings, a real, living person. And that was enough. Come, let's go back, Ling Han said with a smile. In. Hunyou nodded in earnestness. Chapter 451. A Noble from the Middle State. On the way back to Extreme Yang City, Ling Han removed his disguise. Thus, when he reached Extreme Yang City, he had naturally regained his identity as the owner of both Forget Not and Alchemist King Pavilion. He had disappeared for 10 days, and Lu Yutong and the others were all very worried. Thankfully, he had finally returned, which relieved their worries. Ling Han went to the Spirit Treasures Pavilion again, thinking that Yin Hong must have finally managed to get the 9-leaf black Ganoderma for him by now, right? I'm really sorry. The moment Yin Hong saw him, she hurriedly apologized, which gave Ling Han a feeling of foreboding. Indeed, he heard her continue to say, "That spirit herb that you wanted has been intercepted by another." Who did it? Ling Han's killing intent soared. This spirit herb involved the crucial matter of whether Ling Dongxing would be able to cultivate again, and for this reason, he would not hesitate to commit murder. The details are not very clear yet. They only mention that they sold it to someone by the surname of Tang, and coincidentally, according to my investigation, he has also come to Extreme Yang City, and is currently in the North Pill Pavilion, Yin Hong said. I'm really sorry. I had originally come to an agreement with the seller, but this person with the surname Tang should have a very prominent background. That must be why the seller did not hesitate in offending me and still adamantly sold the spirit herb to another. I had been intending to communicate with that person with the surname Tang, and see if he would be willing to resell it to me. However, before I even began communicating, you have already rushed here, Yin Hong continued. Ling Han nodded and said, Still, thank you. At least, he now knew the rough location of the 9-leaf black Ganoderma. You need to take care. This man was able to make the seller refuse to give me face. Either he boasts incredible ability and skill, or has an extremely prominent background, Yin Hong said seriously. I know. Ling Han stood up and left. As Yin Hong watched Ling Han's figure gradually disappear at the main doors to the courtyard, she could not help but support her chin and murmur, That's odd. Is there any great person by the surname of Tang in the North region? Ling Han headed directly to the North Pill Pavilion. Though he was already an Earth-grade alchemist, and had already been in Extreme Yang City for a great many days, there were not really that many times that he had ventured here. At most, he had come to select and buy some seeds of spirit herbs to enrich the space in the Black Tower. He made some queries about the person with the surname Tang among the staff in the Pill Pavilion, but every single one of them simply shook their heads, expressing that they did not know, either. When he recalled that this person with the surname Tang could have come from a very prominent background, and that it was probably normal that these people at the lower ranks did not know of him, Ling Han decided to find some higher-ranked person and ask. But how could an ordinary person enter into the important areas of the Northern Pill Pavilion? He was just about to reveal his identity as an Earth-grade alchemist when he saw 3 people walk in from outside. 2 of them walked slightly ahead, whereas the third walked a bit further behind. One of the 2 people walking ahead was fully dressed in a simple, elegant white robe, with luxuriant black hair, and a white silken veil hiding her face. Though there might be uncountable numbers of women who dressed in this way in the world, there was only one person whose mere vague image could make one fantasize endlessly. Xuan'er. There was a young man by her side who looked to be in his mid-20s and was in the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. A man with this kind of cultivation level could be considered as one of the top elite prodigies in extreme Yang City. However, there was an elite cultivator of the flower blossom tier following behind the both of them. He wore an expression of utmost seriousness and followed them closely. From the looks of his attitude, this elite cultivator of the flower blossom tier actually seemed to be the servant of the two people walking ahead. Ling Han knew that Xuan'er definitely did not have that kind of extravagance. Then, that elite cultivator of the flower blossom tier had to be the underling of that young man. However, even in the case of the Winter Moon sect and the Beast Emperor sect, what sect could allow their disciples to make use of a flower blossom tier cultivator as a mere bodyguard cum servant? Flower blossom tier cultivators were definitely a pillar of support for any sect, and it was highly possible that this kind of person could become an ultimate elite cultivator of the spiritual infant tier. This young man appeared to come from an extremely prominent background. When he remembered what Yin Hong had said previously, Ling Han was practically sure that this young man was that person with the surname Tang. Grandmaster Ling. When Xuan'er saw Ling Han, it was as if she had seen her savior. Her beautiful eyes instantly lit up, and she walked delicately over to him. If you have time, Xuan'er has something that I would like Grandmaster Ling's help on. Grandmaster? When the young man heard this address, he instantly looked disdainful, and said, Xuan'er, if you want to learn about alchemy, you can ask me as much as you like. As a black-grade high-level alchemist, I naturally would be able to answer all your questions. This young man was actually a black-grade high-level alchemist? TSK, that was really exceptional. No wonder he was so arrogant. However, if he was merely a black-grade high-level alchemist, he probably was still not qualified to have an elite cultivator of the flower blossom tier act as his guard, right? Ling Han turned towards that young man and asked, And who are you? How dare you actually dare to speak to young Master Tang in such a tone? That flower blossom tier elite cultivator immediately rebuked angrily, his eyes sharp and piercing, filled with killing intent. For a flower blossom tier cultivator that had cast off their mortal shell, an angry rebuke accompanied with a fierce glare was naturally filled with power, and capable of scaring a spiritual pedestal tier cultivator to their knees. It was naturally a deliberate move on his part. His young master was currently in the process of pursuing Xuan'er, but from the looks of things now, Xuan'er seemed to bear affection for Ling Han. Then, he naturally had to greatly embarrass the latter in front of Xuan'er and humiliate him in front of her. But who was Ling Han? He had a sliver of divine sense left from the heaven tier, and furthermore, was a ruler who had formed 9 flashes of qi, so how could he be suppressed by someone else's imposing attitude? He merely picked at his ear and said, Why are you so vigorously shouting? Your own ears may not be working, so do you think that others are all deaf as well? Insolence! The flower blossom tier cultivator flew into a powerful rage at his words. A mere spiritual pedestal tier cultivator actually dared to be insolent in front of him. Was he ignorant of the hierarchy of martial arts? How could that be acceptable? Xuan'er hurriedly stopped them and said with absolute seriousness, This Ling Han, Grandmaster Ling, is an earth-grade low-level alchemist. What? That flower blossom tier cultivator immediately stared with extremely wide eyes. No matter how he looked at it, Ling Han was only about 18 or 19 years old, and he was already an earth-grade alchemist? One had to know that even for a genius like young Master Tang, he was only a black-grade high-level alchemist. Though there was only the gap of a single level between black-grade high-level and earth-grade low-level, this gap was enough to make one lose all hope for his entire lifetime, as it was a gap he could forever be unable to breach. So what if you are an earth-grade alchemist? The young man merely sneered coldly. In front of me, even an earth-grade high-level alchemist is not enough. Brat, get out of here immediately. Otherwise I will have you die. Ling Han did not get angry, but rather smiled and asked calmly, I don't think I have offended you in any way, have I? You spoke to Xuan'er without getting permission from me, and that is your sin, the young man said coldly. Yet Xuan'er was irritated and asked, What relation is there with you whomever I speak to? Of course there's relation. The young man laughed lightly. I have my eye on you. And since you're my woman, then naturally, no other man is allowed to speak to you. If they did, then they would merely be seeking death. Don't you speak nonsense. Xuan'er rebuked furiously. However, the young man merely laughed loudly and said, I heard that Yao Hui Yu also has his eye on you, And it was because I heard that I deliberately raced all the way here from the Middle State. I wanted to take a look for myself what kind of magnificent beauty was capable of moving the heart of that sword maniac. That bastard is always against me, and though I can't compare to him in terms of martial arts, I can snatch away the woman that he admires. Ha 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 ha, I really want to see his expression when he finds out. Dream on. Xuan'er humphed icily. Is it? A contemplative smile played about the young man's lips. Didn't you want to concoct a heaven-grade alchemical pill? There are only 2 heaven-grade alchemists in the whole of the Middle State, and one of them is my great-grandfather. On what basis do you intend to have a heaven-grade alchemist concoct alchemical pills for you? In the case of our Tang clan, we have concocted alchemical pills for multiple generations, and the amount of wealth we have accumulated over the years is incredibly terrifying. So what kind of bargaining chip can you offer that would make my great-grandfather interested? Unless you become my woman, and I will beg my great-grandfather to concoct an alchemical pill on your behalf. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.